Chapter 900. Although Qing Haofei was somewhat disappointed, he still appeared to be brimming with confidence. He had passed through the first 2 tests of the 7th level, but he was unable to receive 10 moves from Su Ran. This meant that he still had a lot of room for improvement. After all, his talent was there for all to see. As long as he fought more or cultivated some secret technique, his battle prowess would increase by leaps and bounds. He still didn't know that there were 2 other people in the pagoda. They wore incomparably confident smiles as they faced the crowd. They wanted to receive the tsunami-like cheers, the envious gazes of the men, and the adoring gazes of the women. But he was disappointed. Almost everyone was looking up at the White Star Tower, as if they had not noticed the appearance of a super genius like him. Fuck, what's going on? Qing Haofei's face couldn't help but twitch. This scene was something he had never expected. He couldn't help but stagger and almost stagger. He forced himself to walk back and pretended to be indifferent, but he pricked up his ears to listen carefully. It turned out that there were 2 other people in the White Star Tower, and they had both passed through the first 6 levels. What? Not only did Ma Xing appear, there were actually 2 other people who could stand side by side with him. If that was the case, he might not even be able to maintain his 2nd place. He might even slip out of the top 3 and fall into 4th place. Shit, what the hell? If he had known earlier, he would have waited for another 5 years. He did not believe that there would be so many geniuses appearing in the next 5 years. But now, all he could do was wait and hope that the 2 people in the pagoda were not as talented as him. Even if they couldn't get 1st place, they could at least get 2nd place. However, although everyone was concerned about the results of the remaining 2 people, the higher-ups of the Northern Institution still summoned Qing Haofei. They naturally had to win over such a genius and give him some benefits. Otherwise, if he directly gave up his admission qualifications and entered the Eastern Institution after 5 years, they would all be killed by the branch headmaster. After a while, the 7th floor of the tower glowed. At this moment, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. What does it mean to pass the 7 pagodas? 3-star genius. He wasn't weaker than Ma Xing, he really wasn't weak. It should be known that Ma Xing only had the potential to become a 3-star genius by relying on his king's aura, but now, his potential had soared to 3 stars. Moreover, martial artists could also cultivate king's qi after they had acquired it. It wasn't something that only certain people were born with. Who is it? Who is it? In just a short while, a woman in white appeared. Her black hair was like a waterfall, and she was elegant and otherworldly, like a fairy. Sister Yun. Li Weiwei hurriedly ran over and asked. Congratulations, Sister Yun. You have passed the 7th level of the pagoda. In the future, you will be a 3-star genius when you step into the God realm. The others all nodded. Not long after the 7-storied tower lit up, Ji Yun appeared. Obviously, she had passed through the 7th level, but was defeated on the 8th level, so she had to retreat. That was a 7-story tower. Even for a great nation like the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, only one would appear every few thousand years. However, Ji Yun's pretty face changed, and she said, I did not pass through the 7th level. I lost in the 3rd round. What? Li Weiwei exclaimed. What? The others all cried out in surprise. It was actually not. Ji Yun. How is that possible? Li Weiwei suddenly hugged her head, stamped her feet, and said, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. It's actually that blockhead. I really want to stomp him to death. It wasn't that she had not thought that the person who had passed through the 7th level of the pagoda was Ling Han, but this thought only flashed past in a flash. Who asked him to be competing with Ji Yun? But now, Ji Yun had personally admitted that she was not the person who had passed through the 7th level of the pagoda, so there was only one person left. Ling Han. A martial artist from a lower world, an ant that would not be taken seriously by anyone in the immortal realm. Li Weiwei was finally convinced. How could an emperor who could break history and open the skies to come to the immortal realm be simple? Wei Wei, do you know this person? Ji Yun observed her expression, and immediately realized something. Li Weiwei nodded, and said, that is a martial artist from a small world. He has only come to the immortal realm a dozen or so days ago. Ji Yun, a martial artist from a small world? How could this be possible? The cultivation environment of a small world could be compared to that of the immortal realm, the abundance of resources could be compared to that of the immortal realm, and the strength of the elites could be compared to that of the immortal realm. Everything was incomparably backward, and could practically be regarded as a barren land. But it was precisely the person who had walked out from such a barren land that had accomplished a magnificent feat, and passed through the 7th level of the pagoda. This kind of aptitude could be ranked in the top 10 in the entire Scarlet Heaven Academy. The big shots of the Northern Institution, on the other hand, were incomparably excited. This time, they had all profited greatly. Not only had the 3 great geniuses all come, but Ji Yun had also displayed the potential of a 2-star genius. There were also 3 other dark horses. The worst one had also displayed the potential of a 2-star genius. Of the other 2, one had the ruler's chi, while the other had the potential to become a 3-star genius. The Northern Institution thrives. However, this was not the climax. In merely a short while, the 8th level of the pagoda lit up. Heavens, am I wrong? Did the moonlight suddenly become stronger, or is it really the 8th level that is shining? It's impossible. We are all wrong. The 8th level has indeed been lit up. 4-star genius. This time, even the big shots of the Northern Institution could no longer sit still. They all came to the bottom of the White Star Tower, impatiently wanting to see this super genius. 4-star genius, what kind of concept was this? The left and right ministers and the 7 generals were only 4-star geniuses, but what kind of existence were these 9? They were the mainstays of the chaotic star's majestic empire, and practically stood at the peak of this planet. Everyone was shocked, and all of them were even more expectant to see if the person inside could pass through the 9th level and become a 5-star genius that only existed in legends. This freak. Li Weiwei mumbled. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would never have believed that that arrogant guy could actually become a 4-star genius. Thinking of that block of wood's arrogant and confident look, she had the urge to smash Ling Han's face in a frenzy. In the tower, the door leading to the 9th level had already opened, but Ling Han stopped in his tracks, and thought, should I go up to the 9th level again? Forget it, I should be able to firmly seize the first place now. There's no need to display all of my potential for others to know. Now that I'm a 4-star genius, the Academy will definitely focus on nurturing me. Moreover, although a 4-star genius is very outstanding, it's not like such a genius has never appeared in the history of the Academy. But being a 5-star genius might not be a good thing. A 5-star genius might even alarm that empress, and she might even dig up information from him to find out the secret of how he could be so powerful. How could someone from a mere small world be so powerful? To be honest, if it was not for the sake of securing the first place, Ling Han actually wanted to stop after passing through the 7th level. However, a 3-star genius might not be able to suppress Ma Xing, but a 4-star genius would definitely surpass him. With that thought, he resolutely turned around, not even going up to the 9th level. Chapter 901. When Ling Han walked out of the White Star Tower, he felt that all eyes were focused on him. He couldn't help but think that it was a bit too much to pass the 8th level of the tower. If he'd known earlier, he would have stopped after passing the 7th level. Little guy, what's your name? An old man practically pounced over, looking at Ling Han with a fiery gaze as if Ling Han wasn't a man, but a peerless beauty as beautiful as a fairy. Ling Han suppressed the urge to throw a punch, because this old man's face was almost touching his body. But it couldn't be helped. In his excitement, the old man didn't conceal his cultivation level at all. There was an image of a sun and moon behind him, which meant that he was an elite in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. If Ling Han threw this punch, it was guaranteed that he would lose his life in the next second. He took a step back without batting an eyelid, and said, "I am Ling Han." Although his 2 lifetimes added up to more than 200 years old, in front of a sun-moon tier, his little bit of age was really not enough. Even multiplied by 100 years, he might not even be a fraction of the other party's age. "Ling Han, quickly kneel down and acknowledge me as your master." "This old man will take you as a disciple," the old man said hurriedly. "Get lost." With an angry shout, another old man pounced over, directly knocking the first old man into the air, and said angrily, "This is this old man's disciple." "Bullshit." The first old man immediately leaped back, and attacked the second old man fiercely. "Hee hee." The third old man came out, smiling at Ling Han, and said, "Kid, this old man is Zhang Deman, an elder in rotation of the Northern Institution. Quickly come acknowledge me as your master. With this old man backing you up, you can hit whoever you want in the future." Were these words that a teacher should say? "Old man Zhang, you dare to steal this old man's disciple?" The fourth old man appeared, glaring at Zhang Deman. "That's right, old man Zhang, you're too despicable, stealing a disciple while we're sparring." The first 2 old men stopped fighting, and walked back one after another. "Kid, who do you worship as your younger brother?" The 4 elders walked towards Ling Han at the same time. This caused everyone to feel envious. To be able to be the disciple of 4 sun-moon tier elites, what kind of glory was this? This was life, what more could they ask for? The Chaotic Star's majestic empire still had heavenly body tier elites, but how many of them were there? The sun-moon tier was the backbone of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. The heavenly body tier was more of a deterrent. Ordinarily, they would not move easily. Of course, the sun-moon tier was also divided into 4 levels. These 4 old men were all at the low extreme, and were at the bottom of the sun-moon tier. Don't waste time. Go and handle the admission procedures for everyone. At that moment, a middle-aged man flew over and stood at the top of the 9-story tower. Although his voice wasn't loud, it rumbled through the hearts of the people below. "Yes, Lord Vice Headmaster." The 4 old men hurriedly bowed. Only then did everyone realize that this young man was actually stronger than the 4 elders. This was a little inconceivable, but the higher one's cultivation, the longer one's lifespan would be, and the slower one would age. Thus, perhaps this middle-aged man was much older than Zhang Deman and the others in terms of age. With these words from the vice headmaster, Zhang Deman and the others naturally didn't dare to argue anymore. They hurriedly made arrangements and brought those who passed the test to the student quarters of the Northern Institution, while Ling Han, Ma Xing, Cheng Haofei, Ji Yun, and the others stayed behind. The top 10 were all rewarded. The reward for the top 7 was very simple, each person had a true origin stone, and the reward for the top 3 was much more substantial. Ling Han was naturally first place without any suspense, but the second and third places had to be discussed. Ma Xing, Cheng Haofei, and Ji Yun all completed 6 towers, and also passed the first 2 rounds on the 7th floor, so who was second, third, and fourth? After discussion among the higher-ups, it was decided that Ma Xing was second place, while Cheng Haofei and Ji Yun were tied for third place. Although this would require the Northern Institution to fork out some more resources, firstly, the Northern Institution was rich in the first place, and secondly, they were only in the Shattering Void tier, after all, so the resources they consumed were limited. The top 3 enjoyed great privileges. For example, they had a chance to bathe in the Black Jade Pool every month. That wasn't for you to bathe in. The Black Jade Pool was a spiritual pool formed naturally by heaven and earth, and had excellent nourishing effects on the physique and spirit of martial artists. After being taken over by the Scarlet Heaven Academy, large amounts of precious treasures were added to the pool, further improving its effects. However, this pool was only effective for Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier cultivators, and had no effect beyond that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been placed in the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Even if it wasn't taken by the imperial family, weren't there still the 9 kings, the left and right ministers, and the 7 generals? Secondly, they could also receive 2 true origin stones as a reward every month. This was an item unique to the immortal realm, because the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here was really too rich, turning into substance. Its appearance was like jade, and martial artists could extract the energy within it. Whether for cultivation or origin power recovery, it was an excellent supplementary item. Of course, if it was used to recover origin power, it would be too extravagant, because this thing was incomparably precious, and itself was a precious treasure. Besides, true origin stones could also be used as money to purchase precious items, and could also be exchanged for gold and silver, but only a fool would do that. Thirdly, there was an extra replenishing spirit pill every month. Replenishing spirit pill could strengthen the spirit, and was effective for both Shattering Void tier and Immortal tier cultivators. However, Immortals were too powerful, and the effect of replenishing spirit pill was pitifully small. Usually, they would take the Star Yang pill, which had a much stronger effect, but was also much more precious. As long as one was a disciple of the Academy, one could receive a replenishing spirit pill every month, and the third place could receive an extra one, the second 2, and the first 3. True origin stones and replenishing spirit pills were immediately distributed, but the qualifications to enter the Black Jade Pool had to wait until next month, because the time for the 4 major institutions to enter the Black Jade Pool was already divided, and this month's time for the Northern Institution had already passed. After Ling Han and the others received their rewards, they then went to the place where they would live for the next few years, a dozen years, or even decades. Unless they broke through to the immortal tier, they would always live here. Along the way, Zhang Deman was in charge of telling them some rules, such as don't wander around the territories of the other 3 institutions if you had nothing to do, unless you were extremely powerful, or else you had to be prepared to be beaten black and blue. The Academy encouraged students to spar with each other, but in principle, it was forbidden for high-level students to fight with low-level students, unless the low-level students took the initiative to provoke. Finally, Zhang Deman said something very strange. Also, there's a white cat here. You must not provoke it. You must not hurt even a strand of its hair. Otherwise, no one will be able to save you. Why? Everyone was completely confused. Chapter 902. What cat is so powerful? Li Weiwei asked. She was the daughter of the left minister, so she was naturally bold. She didn't fear Zhang Deman would blame her. As expected, Zhang Deman only smiled, and said, I don't know what's so special about that cat, but its master, is our dean. Branch Dean Yan Dongqi? Li Weiwei asked again. Zhang Deman shook his head, and said, No, Fu Hui, Lord Fu. This time, everyone's expression froze. Even Li Weiwei stuck out her tongue, showing an expression of awe. Fu Hui was the dean of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, not a branch dean. He was an elite of the heavenly body tier. No one knew what his cultivation level was, because he spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion. It was precisely because of this that the 4 branches of the Scarlet Heaven Academy were independent, forming a fierce competition. The 4 branches also had their own deans, called branch deans, but they were all at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. In the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, they could be considered top-notch elites. However, although there was only a thin line between the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier and the heavenly body tier, this thin line was too wide. Not to mention 1-star or 2-star geniuses, even 5-star geniuses couldn't cross the barrier of a major tier. Even if Li Weiwei, Ma Xing, and the others were super geniuses, none of them dared to say that they could step into the heavenly body tier in the future. Even the Sun-Moon tier was extremely difficult. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that among the students enrolled every 5 years, there was a 90% chance of advancing into the Mountain River tier. After all, everyone recruited was a genius, but the possibility of reaching the medium extreme was only 10%, the high extreme was 1%, and the consummate level was only 1%. At most, 1% could reach the sun-moon tier. But how many people were recruited each time? Thus, it was very normal for there to be no sun-moon tier students in one or even several batches. With this comparison, one could see the strength of the heavenly body tier. That white cat is Dean Fu's pet, and he likes it very much. So, even if that white cat poops and pees on your heads, you have to endure it. Someone once slapped the white cat, and Master Fu crippled his cultivation and expelled him from the academy, Zhang Deman said solemnly. Could it be the AI family's seventh young master? Someone asked. His surname is indeed AI, and his name is AI Song. Zhang Deman nodded. Although the AI clan is not a top-tier clan, it is ranked near the top amongst the second-tier clans. Lord Fu actually did not give any face at all. Hiss. Do not provoke that cat. Everyone shivered. They all felt that the cat was not to be trifled with. It was already so miserable after being slapped. If they were to really grab a handful of its fur, how miserable would it be? Most people stayed in the dormitories arranged by the academy, but there were also a small number of people who just walked around and returned to their homes at night. For a descendant of an influential family like Li Weiwei, whether or not she came to the academy depended entirely on her mood. Ling Han finally had his own home. The Scarlet Heaven Academy was huge, and everyone had their own independent courtyard. Although it wasn't very big, it had a courtyard, a living room, and a bedroom. It could be said that although it was small, it had all the vital organs. He was very satisfied. After sitting down for a while, he began to think about the next arrangements. Make money. He first had a clear goal. Of course, it wasn't gold or silver, but true essence stones. This was the hard currency of the God realm, just like the origin crystals of the lesser worlds. With money, one could buy all kinds of resources. How to make money? Ling Han rubbed his chin, and unknowingly took out the food from the Black Tower and began to cook it. A few days ago, he stayed in the left minister's residence and kept a very low profile, cultivating in seclusion. Now that this was his territory, his mind was much more relaxed. After spending too much time with Hun Yo, he would think about food when he had nothing better to do. He wondered how Hun Yo, his parents, Helian Sun Shui, and his son were doing now. Could the food from the Black Tower be taken out and sold? This was feasible. With the deliciousness of the food in the Black Tower, even immortals would drool. After all, immortals were only slightly stronger, and not ascetic cultivators with a pure heart and few desires. Otherwise, why would so many elites sit in positions of power? However, which restaurant would use true essence stones to pay the bill? And if he wanted to send the food to the homes of high officials and local tycoons, he had to have the means. Oh, right. Ling Han clapped his hands. Wasn't Li Weiwei the means? If the daughter of the left minister wanted to do business, who wouldn't give her some face? Anyways, the ingredients in the Black Tower were almost free, and even if the profits from the sale had to be split equally with Li Weiwei, it was fine. After all, channels were king. Ling Han nodded. Additionally, he could also concoct pills, such as this replenishing spirit pill, which was extremely popular among Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier cultivators. Moreover, it couldn't be bought with gold or silver, but with true essence stones. Concocting pills was his old trade, and also what he was most skilled at. In his last life, who knew how much he earned from this trade? Even the proud and arrogant Sword Emperor and Setting Sun Saber Emperor had to lower their heads in front of him. This was also a means of doing things. Having Li Weiwei help contact a seller was, after all, putting his lifeline in someone else's hands. Who knew when that kind of young lady would change her mind, but alchemical pills were different. Once concocted, would there be a fear that they wouldn't be sold? Where was the roasted meat he put on the rack? Ling Han had just released the gold-seeking rat from the Black Tower. He now only brought this little guy along, and its natural talent was still quite helpful. But when he turned his head, the 2 pieces of meat that were almost cooked had disappeared without a trace. He couldn't help but be shocked. The meat had practically been stolen from right under his eyes without a sound. The speed of the other's movement technique, and the agility of the other's actions, were really a bit shocking. But when his eyes swept over, he almost spat out. On the courtyard wall, a fat white cat was currently gorging itself, and the thing it was currently gnawing on was naturally the roasted meat that Ling Han had just lost. Zhang Deman's words immediately surged through Ling Han's mind. Big white cat. Fuck, it couldn't be so coincidental, right? The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched slightly. On his first day of entering the academy, he encountered the legendary white cat that definitely couldn't be provoked. This cat was so despicable, stealing things the moment it came up. The big white cat also discovered that Ling Han had caught it, but it didn't have the fear of being caught as a thief. Instead, it roared at Ling Han, meow. Its voice wasn't loud, but there was a faint hint of a tiger's roar, sounding childish. It started gnawing again, with a despicable look that said, "Come bite me if you have the guts." Ling Han instantly had the urge to make a move, and then remembered that the senior brother couldn't help but hit this big white cat previously, and it wasn't without reason. He snorted, and said, "Thief, I'll forget about this meal, just treat it as my treat. Don't think about stealing next time." This big white cat was only in the shattering void tier. Even if its movement technique was agile and its speed was shockingly fast, as long as Ling Han remained vigilant, it was guaranteed that the other wouldn't succeed. Meow. The big white cat meowed very proudly, meaning, "If I want to eat, can you stop me?" It picked up the remaining meat, leaped, and swaggered off. Chapter 903. Ling Han decided to deal with every move that came his way. Although there were unfavorable rumors circulating in the sect that were spreading against him, that was only true for the wise. He was sure that those who could enter the Majestic Heaven sect were all intelligent people. As such, these rumors would quickly lose their market value. He still went to the Mo clan establishment and sold a large number of alchemical pills. Moreover, he also made a copy of the pill recipe. This was an ancient recipe, and it was likely that it had already been lost in the modern world. Thus, he should be able to sell it for a good price. As for the 1000-source true fluid, he also decided to sell it. "Don't you, Gao Huang, want it? I'm not going to give it to you. This is a slap to your face." Ling Han truly didn't need the 1000-source true fluid. It could only help him comprehend Tao, but it couldn't increase his cultivation level. Meanwhile, comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree couldn't increase his comprehension ability, but he could make up for it with time. If he couldn't comprehend Tao in 1 or 2 days, what would he do in 8 to 10 years? This was equivalent to a different kind of 1000-source true fluid. Moreover, it was an endless supply. Thus, Ling Han naturally wanted to sell the 1000-source true fluid to increase his wealth so that he could purchase godly metal to increase the quality of his divine demon sword. In any case, Ling Han was destined to be a poor bastard before the divine demon sword reached the quality of divine metal. If he had any money, he would have to spend it on the divine demon sword. However, the might of the divine demon sword had already begun to manifest, and its battle prowess was no weaker than Ling Han's. No matter how much money he spent, it would still be worth it. When he spoke to Han Hua, the latter was immediately stunned. He then happily agreed, and after a brief discussion with Ling Han, they decided to hold an auction. The auction items would be the 1000-source true fluid, ancient pill recipes, and alchemical pills that Ling Han had provided. Good items like the 1000-source true fluid and ancient pill recipes definitely had to be auctioned off to maximize their value. As for the alchemical pills, they could borrow the limelight, and they would definitely be able to fetch a higher price than usual. Businessmen were indeed different. Their thoughts were much more thorough and detailed than Ling Han's. Ling Han nodded, and handed everything over to Han Hua to handle. Meanwhile, he returned to the majestic heaven sect. He still had to busy himself with cultivating the star-plucking step and comprehending new pill recipes. When he returned to the palace, he saw that the old ginseng was currently chatting and laughing with Li Weiwei and Ji Yun. He was massaging the two women's shoulders, and one of his ginseng roots took this opportunity to slip into the women's collars. This perverted ginseng is hopeless. Say, although you've taken human form, you're only the size of a child's arm. What can you do? Ling Han shook his head. However, what were Li Weiwei and Ji Yun doing here? You blockhead, you actually dared to hide this from us. Li Weiwei immediately jumped up when she saw Ling Han. This caused the old ginseng to grimace in anger. This was because one of his ginseng roots had been stuck in Li Weiwei's chest, and he hadn't been able to come out in time. Thus, she had directly torn it off with her jump. Li Weiwei hadn't noticed at all, yet Ling Han had arrived. He merely chuckled in his mind. Who asked the old ginseng to take advantage of her? Coincidentally, this ginseng root could be considered compensation for Li Weiwei. The old ginseng's roots were indeed extremely nutritious. Ling Han had only plucked one root and consumed it. The others had been deposited in the old ginseng's body. Now that Li Weiwei had unintentionally obtained one, it was naturally extremely beneficial to her cultivation level and physique. Ling Han smiled faintly, and asked, "How did you guys discover this?" "Hee, I don't believe that big sister Shui is the kind of person who would change her mind at the sight of a stranger. Thus, I pestered the 9th king to ask her, and she quickly spilled the secret," Li Weiwei said smugly. Sure enough, this girl Hu Feiyun was completely unreliable. She was a clone of Empress Yuan Xing, and her personality was a part of the Empress. Thus, it was inevitable that she would have some imperfections in her personality, and some of her personality would be magnified to the extreme. For example, Hu Feiyun was naive and muddle-headed. This was a personality that Empress Yuan Xing had severed. At first, it was only a small part of the Empress, but now, it was Hu Feiyun's entire personality. "Blockhead, what do you plan to do? Everyone outside is talking about how you killed others and stole their treasures." Li Weiwei quickly put aside the matter of Ling Han hiding his identity, and began to worry for him. "It's fine. I'll deal with whatever comes my way." "What can't I deal with?" Ling Han said with a smile. "You sure talk big." Li Weiwei humphed. However, seeing how confident Ling Han was, she also relaxed. After all, Ling Han had come out from the chaotic star's majestic empire, and had encountered many dangers, but hadn't he resolved all of them? Feng Peiyun, Ding Ping, and the others came over to ask, but they were also calmly comforted by Ling Han and left. He could handle this matter by himself. However, in the next few days, Ling Han didn't have the time to cultivate at all. Xiao Sisi, Xia Wuk, Su Jing, and the others all came over, extending an olive branch to Ling Han. As long as Ling Han was willing to join their camp, they would do their best to resolve this problem for Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and declined. He didn't plan to join anyone. Wasn't he cultivating so hard all for the sake of breathing the air of freedom and being his true self? Afterward, He Tao and the other king tiers also came over, saying the same words as Xiao Sisi and the others. They wanted to recruit Ling Han. This was because Ling Han had a clean background. He had come from a small world, and he had no roots in the immortal realm. Thus, he didn't have to worry about being recruited and entrusted with important tasks, only to discover that he was a spy from another sect. Ling Han naturally wouldn't agree either. At this moment, news suddenly spread that the sect was seriously considering the fact that Ling Han had massacred his fellow disciples. It was possible that a public trial would be held in a few days. Gao Huang was finally going to show his sword. On the same night that this news spread, a Sun-Moon tier elite appeared in front of Ling Han's palace. "I am Zhou Tong." This sun-moon tier elite looked to be in his 30s, yet he had already formed 2 suns and moons. His strength was truly terrifying. There was a proud expression on his face, and he said, "I've come on the orders of young master. I'll give you one last chance. Immediately hand over 4 drops of 1,000 source true fluid. Otherwise, you'll become a sinner of the sect for all eternity, and you'll be forever nailed to the pillar of shame." Ling Han smiled, and said, "Instead of being a sun-moon tier elite, you chose to become someone else's lackey. How dare you!" Zhou Tong's fury instantly erupted, and divine flames roared around him. Ling Han waved his hand, and said, "Don't be so fierce to me. You've only cultivated for a few 100,000 years more than me. Do you believe me when I say that I'll be able to beat you up in another 10 years? His words were extremely domineering. A mountain river tier cultivator actually said that he would be able to beat an elite at the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier in 10 years? Who would believe him? However, Zhou Tong's pupils contracted. With this brat's freakish cultivation speed, it really was possible that he could achieve this. Though he didn't really believe it. He humphed, and said, "If you hadn't handed over the 1,000 source true fluid, you wouldn't have been able to survive this trial at all." "What 10 years?" Ling Han smiled faintly. He had grasped the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, and there was also a Red Rain Divine King tree in the Black Tower. Thus, he would definitely be able to concoct many Berserk Blood Spirit pills after he advanced to the Sun-Moon tier. It could be imagined that his cultivation level would soar at some point in time. "Go back and tell Gao Huang that if he wants the 1,000 source true fluid, he'll have to bring enough true origin stones and participate in the auction in 3 months, Ling Han said. This was a good opportunity to advertise for free. Chapter 904. What Li Weiwei thought about all day was naturally what every young girl would think about. She met a handsome, elegant, and powerful Prince Charming, who had never been seen before or since, and he wanted to have a passionate love with her. Ever since she had lost to Ling Han, this blockhead would occasionally appear in her dreams, actually trying to stop her Prince Charming from falling in love with her, and even wanting to snatch her love away. What was hateful was that in her dreams, she had no power to resist, and was always bullied by Ling Han. This made 4th Miss Li very unhappy. Every time she woke up, she would gnash her teeth in hatred. Before she could even give Ling Han a good beating, this guy had already bullied her several times in her dreams. There was nothing she could do about it. Who asked 4th Miss Li's status to be too noble? Usually, when they sparred, others would always give in to her, but she had suffered a crushing defeat at Ling Han's hands. Thus, when she heard Ling Han say that he wanted her to go to his residence, Li Weiwei immediately used her rich imagination, thinking that this blockhead had some improper thoughts towards her, and naturally blurted it out. "This guy, it's not enough that you bullied me in my dreams, and you still want to force yourself on me?" Weiwei. Ji Yun hurriedly tugged at Li Weiwei, afraid that she would say something even more shocking. Li Weiwei covered her little mouth, realizing that she had let the cat out of the bag. She immediately glared at Ling Han. Of course, it was Ling Han's fault. "Who asked you to always make things difficult for me in my dreams?" The two girls found a place to sit down, and this instantly attracted many people who went up to strike up a conversation. It was either because of the two girls' beauty, or because of Li Weiwei's status. The daughter of the left minister was not awesome enough. "Ma Xing is here," someone said, and everyone walked towards the door. They saw a tall and sturdy young man walk in. His arms were bare, and he emitted the aura of a wild beast, practically suffocating people. Perhaps his king's qi was cultivated in the process of interacting with wild beasts. Ma Xing seemed to be still asleep, and his eyes were a little hard to open. But when he entered the classroom and saw Ling Han, his slightly hazy eyes immediately lit up. He stared at Ling Han and said, "Ling Han, I want to fight you." "All right." Ling Han nodded. "If you want me to help, then please pay 10 true essence stones first. If you lose, then pay another 100 true essence stones." Please inspect the goods first, I can't fight for nothing. A considerable number of people laughed out loud. Ling Han's greed for money was really too much. Li Weiwei, on the other hand, clutched her head and muttered, this disgraceful fellow. To think that I stood up for him just now. Now, I'm going to be humiliated along with him. Ji Yun smiled, and her beautiful eyes swept over Ling Han, revealing a sliver of curiosity. What kind of man was this? Ma Xing's aura was immediately stifled. He had come from the wilderness, so how could he possibly have any true origin stones? After a moment's hesitation, he said, all right, let's fight again when I have so many true origin stones. He was much more straightforward than Luo Ba, causing everyone to nod in agreement. As expected of someone who had come from the wilderness, he was straightforward. Ma Xing no longer stared at Ling Han. His gaze swept over, and he found Ji Yun. He immediately walked over, and said, Beauty, I like you. Why don't we eat meat together later? Bullshit. Many people directly choked. They had seen people who spoke straightforwardly, but this was the first time they had seen someone so straightforward. It was not strange that he liked Ji Yun. The number of people who admired her in the imperial capital could line up 3 times, but Ma Xing was definitely the first to confess so directly. Furthermore, was there anyone who pursued a girl like this? He actually opened his mouth and asked her to eat meat. Did he want to use this to bribe Fairy Ji? He was practically so silly that it was cute. Ji Yun smiled reservedly, and said, I still have something to do after class. If there's a chance, I'll eat with senior brother Ma again. Big sister Yun, what do you want? Li Weiwei was someone who craved for the world to be in chaos, so she deliberately tilted her head and asked. Ji Yun wanted to smack her little head with her finger. After rolling her eyes, she finally said, Did you forget? I'll be accompanying you later, lest you worry that I'll be harmed by others. Oh. Li Weiwei nodded. She pulled on Ji Yun's arm, and said, Right. You must protect me. With the 2 of us, that blockhead will definitely not dare to act recklessly. Ma Xing was tactfully rejected, and could not help but scratch his head. He sat down at one side, and very soon, he lay down and fell asleep. His snores were like the rumbling of thunder. As expected, he had not woken up yet. Li Weiwei immediately moved closer to Ji Yun's ear, and said, Big sister Yun, you must definitely not like this guy. He snores like a pig. If you marry him, you'll have to suffer every day. Ji Yun rolled her eyes again. This best friend of hers was good in every way, but her imagination was too rich, and she did not know whether to laugh or cry. As the time for class drew closer, more and more people arrived. When Lin Yu appeared, he was even more like the moon surrounded by the stars. His popularity was definitely top-notch, and even Li Weiwei, the daughter of the left minister, could not compare. Ta. The crisp sound of footsteps traveled over, and there was an indescribable charm to it. The person had clearly not arrived yet, but it made people involuntarily think that this should be a stunning beauty. Only then would the sound of her footsteps produce such a beautiful rhythm. All of a sudden, the voices in the classroom immediately quieted down. In the instant that the sound of footsteps appeared at the door, the entire classroom was already completely silent. An incomparably alluring figure appeared at the door. Her figure was slender and delicate, and every inch of her body was perfect. A little too perfect. For example, her breasts were too big, her waist was too thin, and her buttocks were too round and perky. It was hard for anyone to control themselves when they looked at her. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, and the sunlight shone through her beautiful jet-black hair, exuding a hazy sense of beauty. When everyone's gazes moved to her face, everyone felt a suffocating feeling. How could there possibly be such a beautiful person in this world? Li Weiwei and Ji Yun were both stunning beauties, but compared to her, they were obviously a notch inferior. It was not that they were not as beautiful as her, but rather that their charm and temperament would make one intoxicated with a single look. The population of the immortal realm was large, and added with the common longevity, the number of beautiful women was naturally astonishing. In a small world, there would only be one beauty every 10 million years, and here, one could possibly find a few in a single city. After reaching the pinnacle of beauty, then who would emerge victorious would depend on temperament and status. For example, why was the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire known as the greatest beauty in the world, making the emperors of two great majestic empires be willing to give up their entire empire for her? While her beauty was definitely unparalleled in the world, there was another important reason, and that was her strength. An elite in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, this kind of strength, this kind of status, would make men feel an endless desire to conquer her, which naturally added to her beauty. Of course, it was rumored that the Empress was indeed extremely charming. Even when the left minister and the others went to report on important matters, they did not dare to look directly at this Empress at all, fearing that they would do something disrespectful. That would be seeking death. Ling Han had not seen the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire before, but he had to admit that this beauty at the door was really charming to the extreme, even surpassing Zhu Xian, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Chapter 905. In the classroom, there was a thumping sound of heartbeats that was as fast as the beating of a drum. Even Ling Han was slightly dazed and somewhat unable to control himself, let alone the others. This woman walked into the classroom, but did not find a seat to sit down. Instead, she stood on the rostrum and said, "I am Shui Yenyu. From today onwards, I will be your lecturer." Wow, the classroom was filled with cheers. Everyone was excited. This peerless beauty was actually their teacher. She was already extremely charming, and with the addition of the taboo identity of teacher, it made their hearts itch even more. It's actually Shui Yenyu. She entered the Northern Institution 20 years ago, right? At that time, she and Zhou Menghuai were known as the Empire's twin beauties, and their fame was even greater than the current three beauties of the imperial capital. Who would have thought that she would have already advanced into the Mountain River tier in just 20 years? The level of the Shattering Void tier was too low, and no elite would go and study it specifically. Thus, it was usually the students who had just broken through to the Mountain River tier who took on the role. If there was experience, they could share it. Of course, to be able to take up the post of lecturer meant that one must have achieved impressive results in the Shattering Void tier, and would at least have battle prowess of 19 stars of Shattering Void tier. I heard that senior brother Zhao is pursuing senior sister Shui. Which senior brother Zhao? Of course it's senior brother Zhao Luan. The ultimate genius 500 years ago, the one who cultivated the Shattering Void tier to 20 stars of battle prowess at the age of 26, broke through to the Mountain River tier at the age of 30, advanced into the medium extreme at the age of 90, and advanced into the high extreme at the age of 380. Senior brother Zhao Luan. Aside from him, who else in the Northern Institution is qualified to call him senior brother Zhao? Sigh, then we can only admire senior sister Shui. It has nothing to do with us. Don't admire her too much. I heard that senior brother Zhao is incomparably close to senior sister Shui, and he'll be displeased if others look at her. I advise everyone to avoid talking to senior sister Shui as much as possible. Otherwise, Everyone sighed. It wasn't easy for them to get such a beautiful teacher, yet they couldn't flirt with her. They even had to be careful with their words. Otherwise, if they provoked Zhao Luan, they would definitely be done for. Zhao Luan also had another identity. He was the only son of Great General Zhao. Great General Zhao, one of the 7 generals, was an elite of the heavenly body tier. He himself was extremely strong, and his background was extremely strong. Who would dare to fight with him over a woman? Sister Shui is so beautiful. Li Weiwei clenched her fists tightly, her eyes about to turn into stars. Yet Ji Yun sighed softly in her heart. She was a little like Shui Yenyu, both of them having difficulty controlling their own marriages. Thus, being beautiful and talented wasn't necessarily a good thing. Unless one was freakishly talented like Empress Yuan Xing, they would be able to control their own fate. I have cultivated to battle prowess of 20 stars in the Shattering Void tier, so I can still guide you all a little, Shui Yanyu said. Her voice was clear and sweet, causing those who heard it to feel a supreme sense of enjoyment. First, tell me, why do you want to charge for 20 stars of Shattering Void tier? I know, a student said, raising his hand. Although he knew that the beauty was taken, he still wanted to show off in front of this exquisite beauty. He said, the stronger one's battle prowess is in the Shattering Void tier, the stronger the battle prowess one possesses in the immortal level. Shui Yanyu nodded, and said, that's right, the lifespan of living beings in the immortal level is too long. Advancing into the Mountain River tier has a lifespan of 100,000 years, and every increase in tier would add another 100,000 years to one's lifespan. However, because of this, the increase in tier is also very, very slow. Breaking through once in several tens of thousands of years is already considered not bad. Thus, we spend at most 100 years in the Shattering Void tier to charge for peak battle prowess, but we can benefit in the next several 100,000 years, or even several million years. So, I advise everyone to be patient. Even if you can't charge to 20 stars of battle prowess, you have to at least reach 18 stars. Ling Han nodded inwardly, but was somewhat puzzled. Even Wu Gaoyuan, Xiao Miaoyan, and the others reached 18 stars of battle prowess, so why did Yi Shuang only have 15 stars of battle prowess? At her strongest, she was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, so the force behind her obviously surpassed the 5 sections. However, the 5 sects could nurture successors of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, so why was she so inferior? In a small world, battle prowess reaching 15 stars was indeed extremely shocking, but in the immortal realm, probably everyone in this classroom had such battle prowess, so it wasn't rare at all. He'd ask her when he met her in the future. Shui Yanyu paused, and then said, now, I will share with everyone my experience in charging for peak battle prowess. She indeed didn't hide anything, and clearly explained the process of how she charged for 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, but everyone was speechless when they heard it. They really couldn't imagine that this beautiful and alluring beauty was actually so desperate. According to her method, it was really possible that she would die. Ling Han suddenly opened his mouth, and said, may I ask, Teacher Shui, how does one cultivate strength to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier? The classroom was silent, and then there was a wave of laughter. I'm dying of laughter. What kind of nonsense is this? How can strength reach 20 stars? Ha, if strength can reach 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, then how many stars of battle prowess can it reach? 25 stars. 30 stars, don't think blindly, that's impossible. As expected of someone from a small world, to actually ask such a low-level question. Shui Yanyu waved her hand, and said solemnly, according to the research of our predecessors, after we cultivate our origin power to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, we still have at most 4 stars of room for improvement, and the power of our physical body is the same, also 4 stars. The words of a beauty were indeed different, and everyone immediately quieted down. But if that's the case, the limit of strength is 17 stars, still a little short of 20 stars. Shui Yenyu's eyes swept over everyone, and she said, let me tell you, strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier does exist. What? Everyone exclaimed in shock. This was too inconceivable, shattering their understanding. In the past, Senior Su reached the strength of 20 stars in the Shattering Void tier, unprecedented in both history and future. Shui Yenyu's beautiful eyes shone, revealing strong admiration. If Su Ran suddenly appeared, he might be able to win this beauty's heart with just a few words. Then how do we make up for this strength of 3 stars? Someone asked. Shui Yanyu shook her head, and said, this is something that cannot be achieved by human strength, and requires the help of heaven. For example, some magnificent feat that has obtained the approval of heaven and earth. Li Weiwei suddenly thought of something, and said, Big Sister Shui, if one came from opening the sky from a small world, would he obtain the help of heaven and earth? Shui Yanyu thought for a moment, and said, there has never been a small world that came from opening the sky on the joint peace planet, so I am not sure either. But to be able to open the sky is an astonishing feat, and it is not impossible to obtain a generous gift from heaven and earth. Li Weiwei nodded. The Great Ling Empire came from opening the sky, and this was not a secret among the upper echelons of the nation. However, the Great Ling Empire was really too weak, so which powerful figure would take it to heart? Thus, among the younger generation, only she knew that Ling Han was the emperor that came from opening the sky. This guy could open the sky, so his battle prowess must have reached 20 stars, and he was also bestowed a generous gift from heaven and earth, so how strong was his battle prowess now? Li Weiwei's eyes instantly widened. Chapter 906. Ling Han, however, thought of another matter. Theoretically speaking, it was instead impossible for the people of the immortal realm to cultivate their strength to 20 stars of shattering void tier, because the last 3 stars of strength could not be crossed. Only the people of a small world obtained the bounty of heaven and earth through splitting open the sky could raise the strength of these 3 stars. From a certain perspective, this was also fair. The people of the immortal realm enjoyed endless resources from birth, so they also had to pay some price. Of course, such a price was almost negligible. The joint peace planet had existed for so many years, and only a few small worlds had come by splitting open the sky. However, how did Su Ran reach the strength of 20 stars of shattering void tier? He must have come by splitting open the sky. Why was there no legend of him? Even Xiang Qingyun thought that Ling Han was the first person in history to come by splitting open the sky, but one had clearly appeared 300,000 years ago. Perhaps there was some secret hidden in between. Su Ran appeared 300,000 years ago, and only stayed in the Scarlet Heaven Academy for 300 years before reaching the peak stage of the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. Then, he left the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and even the joint peace planet, and there was no news of him since then. Shui Yanyu said, if you want to break through to the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, you need to do 3 things at once. First, increase origin power, second, increase physical strength, and third, increase the power of secret techniques. Today, we will start with physical strength. This is also the easiest to start with. She guided everyone in their cultivation. This was really very simple. Shatter the bones, then use a secret technique to refine them, and then reforge them. Each time could only increase the strength of the physical body by a little, but after 100 refinements, it could become steel. Everyone's faces twitched when they heard her say this casually. This was too terrifying. How many people could endure it? If they could knock themselves unconscious, then it would be fine if they completed the refinement without even realizing it. However, they needed to stay awake throughout the entire process and take the initiative to refine. Only then would there be an effect. Everyone understood the principle, but it was really too difficult to do it. Thankfully, everyone did not need to break through to 20 stars of strength. They only needed to push their battle prowess to 20 stars. This was relatively easier, and they did not need to torment themselves so badly. At the end of the day, though everyone's hearts were stirred by Shui Yenyu's beauty, they also felt a sliver of fear towards her. They were afraid that she would forcefully press down on their heads and break all the bones in their bodies. This was no laughing matter. Thankfully, Shui Yenyu herself also had to cultivate. Thus, they only had to attend 1 class every 5 days. The rest of the time, they could cultivate by themselves. If they had any questions, they could ask them during the next class. Of course, a teacher in the academy could not be compared to a master who kowtowed to him. This was not a true master-disciple relationship, it was just imparting skills. Ling Han called Li Weiwei along, and went to the place where he was staying. Ji Yun also followed. Hey, why are you acting so mysterious? What's the matter? Li Weiwei was impatient and couldn't help but ask as soon as she entered the courtyard. Ling Han chuckled and said, "I'll treat you to a meal." TSK, Li Weiwei immediately sneered. Did he think that she had never eaten delicacies before? He actually used such a method to bribe her. Wait. She stared at Ling Han, and said, Hey, you can't be thinking of putting some drug in the food, and then plotting against us, right? You beast, you actually want to kill two birds with one stone, that's too dirty. Weiwei. Ji Yun, called out, her pretty face flushed. Even she was shocked by this girl's rich imagination. Ling Han took out ingredients from the Black Tower, and began to cook. He said, "Then if you want to eat it or not, I beg you. I won't fall for your provocation. I've played this trick of yours since I was 3 years old." Li Weiwei suddenly sniffed, her eyes staring at the 3 pieces of meat on the grill, and then at the soup on the side. "Smells so good," she said, moved. "None of your business," Ling Han said with a smile. "There's poison in this meat, so just, if you dare to poison it, I'll cut you to death." Li Weiwei couldn't help but lick her tongue, and said, "Blockhead, where did this meat come from? It smells so good." Ling Han glanced at her, and said, "What, you want to eat it? Stupid blockhead." Li Weiwei humphed. "You're really petty, didn't I just say one sentence? Fine, so what if I want to eat it? If you're not convinced, come bite me." Ling Han was speechless. No wonder Minister Zhuo was so troubled by this beloved daughter of his. Indeed, she really didn't have the slightest bit of demeanor of a virtuous lady. He smiled, and said, "I still have a lot of ingredients like this, so I want to make a business deal with you. Want to sell it to me? Sure, I'll buy as much as you have." Li Weiwei waved her hand, appearing very rich and overbearing. Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at her with a suspicious gaze, and said, "How many true origin stones do you have?" "Less than 1,000, don't tell me you have money." Li Weiwei opened her mouth to refute, but sighed dejectedly. She really couldn't produce 1,000 true origin stones. The more wealthy and powerful a clan was, the stricter the restrictions on the usage of their descendants. That was because if you had more money in your hands, it was possible for you to indulge in debauchery and debauchery. But this was the golden age for cultivation, so how could one squander it? Yet Ji Yun's beautiful eyes lit up, and she said, "Senior brother Ling means to sell these ingredients to the various wealthy and powerful clans?" Ling Han clapped his hands, and said with a smile, "Junior sister Ji is still the smart one." He was the top student of this batch of new students, so no matter if they were older or younger than him, they all had to address him as senior brother. Li Weiwei was dissatisfied, and muttered, "How am I stupid? However, these are not spirit meat. No matter how delicious they are, I reckon that no one will be willing to use true origin stones to buy them." Ji Yun spoke up. Ling Han obviously wanted true origin stones, and in large quantities at that. "Spirit meat? What spirit meat?" Ling Han asked. Li Weiwei instantly sneered, and said, as expected of a country bumpkin, not even knowing about spirit meat. Spirit meat can only be nurtured by immortal-level demonic beasts. That is the most essential part, and can be consumed directly. It can greatly replenish one's origin chi, and can increase one's cultivation level. The effects are even better than true origin stones. Unfortunately, no matter how big a demonic beast's size is, spirit meat is only related to its cultivation level. If it is in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, there would only be such a small piece. She gestured the size of a pinky finger. It was really pitifully small. One had to know that immortal-level demonic beasts could easily reach the terrifying size of a mountain. Ling Han gave an "oh." Then he had another channel to increase his cultivation level. He saw that a piece of roasted meat was almost done, so he took it down and used a small knife to cut it into 2 portions. He placed them on a plate, and handed them to Li Weiwei and Ji Yun, respectively. He said, have a taste first, and see if it is worth spending true origin stones to buy. Blockhead, you really didn't drug it? Li Weiwei's face was filled with doubt. If you don't want to eat it, then give it back to me. Ling Han acted like he was going to take back the plate. Go, go, go. You have delivered it into my hands, so it is mine now. How can you take it back? Li Weiwei hurriedly protected her food. She used her chopsticks to pick up the roasted meat, and took a bite. Instantly, her pretty face changed. Chapter 907. What? What? Zhu Tianqiu and Yu Si almost jumped in fright. Ling Han was actually just bait. Why did they have to deal with Ling Han? Although Ling Han had disobeyed the Yan Huang, this wasn't enough for the Gao faction to expend so much effort to deal with him. Most importantly, it was for the 4 drops of thousand source true fluid. Now, however, the thousand source true fluid had actually been handed over to the Mo Clan Trading Company for auction. Then, so what if they captured Ling Han? They had been tricked. Don't look like you've eaten a dead child. You have to know that the thousand source true fluid is mine in the first place. You guys are anxious for my things. Ha, should I thank you guys? Ling Han chuckled, his tone filled with mockery. Before he had gone into seclusion, he had handed over the thousand source true fluid and the other auction items to Ding Ping, and he had also predicted that the Gao faction would definitely keep an eye on the people around him. Thus, he had used himself as bait, and attracted everyone here today. This was very normal. The culprit had appeared, so shouldn't they capture the culprit? You are lying. Zhu Tianqiu shouted loudly. He had already suffered a loss at Ling Han's hands. If he was tricked by Ling Han again, then it would really be difficult for him to raise his head in public. That's right. You definitely want to lure us back to the town, and then take the opportunity to escape, Yu Si said. Ling Han shrugged, and said, Ha, only a loser would stubbornly believe that he has not failed. Fine, let's go quickly. This farce should also come to an end. I do not want to bear a groundless crime, even if it is only suspicion. Zhu Tianqiu and Yu Si exchanged a look. It was already too late to return to the Mo clan establishment now. They could only escort Ling Han back. At least they would have completed this task. After a while, they arrived at the White Jade Palace on the main peak. The White Jade was flawless. This was the place where the sect interrogated people. Whether they were black or white, they would naturally be clear after the interrogation. Knowing that Ling Han had been brought to justice, a few elites immediately rushed over. They were the main interrogators. There were a total of 5 people, and they were all at the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. Heavenly Body tier elites naturally would not personally come to interrogate a mere Mountain River tier cultivator. Who would be so free? Even Heavenly Body tier elites were like this, what more Eternal River tier elites? Venerable Trinity practically spent the entire year cultivating, and rarely came out of seclusion. However, wasn't the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier not enough? Aside from 1 Eternal River tier and 24 Heavenly Body tier elites, this was the strongest force. Even in the entire galaxy, this was not a force that could be underestimated. Han Lin, why aren't you kneeling upon seeing us? One of the main interrogators shouted. His name was Xin Kuo, and he was the leader of the 5 main interrogators. He sat in the center. Ling Han calmly said, this disciple has not violated any rules of the sect, so what crime is there to speak of? Moreover, I am a seed, so there is no need for me to kneel and pay my respects to the esteemed ones. Hee, greetings to the esteemed ones. He clasped his hands in greeting, and nodded at the 5 of them. This was considered a form of greeting. What an arrogant person, the other main interrogator, Ma Gai, said. His eyes were very narrow, and there was a hint of femininity to them. Young man, if you're too stubborn, you'll easily break. Those who are too arrogant never have good endings. Oh, are you talking about Yang Hao, esteemed ones? Ling Han asked with a smile. That person is indeed arrogant. He's clearly at the Sun-Moon tier, yet he openly attacked a cultivator at the Mountain River tier. He has completely disregarded the sect's rules, and he has actually not been punished even after causing such a ruckus. There is simply no justice in this world. Pooh! The 5 main interrogators almost exploded with rage. You really know how to fucking spout nonsense. Yang Hao was indeed arrogant. However, he was a super prodigy that only appeared once every 1 million years. Moreover, he was more than likely to become the disciple of Venerable Trinity. Thus, he had the right to be arrogant. Moreover, hadn't Yang Hao been beaten to a miserable state in the end? Even his life essence had been expelled, and his lifespan had been shortened by at least a few hundred years. Although a few hundred years wasn't a long time for elites who were destined to become heavenly body tier elites, it wasn't a short time either. When their lifespan reached its end, even a few hours would be incredibly precious, to say nothing of a few hundred years. Yang Hao hadn't even cried out after suffering such a huge loss, yet Shen Kuo was still making sarcastic remarks here. Was there any justice left in this world? Han Lin, don't change the subject. Shen Kuo coughed heavily. This time, he was interrogating Ling Han to see if he had committed any crimes, so why was he shifting the blame onto someone else? He coldly asked, do you know your crimes? What crimes? Ling Han asked with a smile. You slaughtered Shi Ming and the others from the Gao faction in the Yellow Spring Mystery Realm, and stole their 1000-source true fluid, Shen Kuo said in a menacing voice. He even unleashed the aura of a Sun-Moon tier elite to suppress Ling Han. Unfortunately, Ling Han's divine sense had been tempered by the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, so it was stable and resilient. Moreover, he had also refined the remnant essence of a demon master. If one wanted to suppress his spirit, they would have to be a supreme elite of the Genesis tier at least. Sun-Moon tier wasn't enough. Ling Han stood proudly, and said, what do you mean by good faction or bad faction? I've never seen one, nor have I heard of one. Sophistry. Ma Kuo humphed, and said, if you didn't have a guilty conscience, why did you disappear for a few months? I couldn't find you no matter what. Milord really likes to joke. Isn't it very normal for cultivators to cultivate in seclusion? Ling Han said with a smile. Could it be that Milord would deliberately report to the sect when he was cultivating in seclusion? Ma Kuo was instantly rendered speechless. Sect disciples could naturally cultivate in seclusion at any time. However, the timing of Ling Han's seclusion was far too coincidental. No matter how you looked at it, they were both fleeing to escape punishment. Shen Kuo waved a hand, and said, today is a fair trial to determine whether you're guilty or innocent. Thus, you haven't been tortured yet. The sect definitely won't force you to confess, but they won't allow a true criminal to slip through, either. Milord is fair and just, Ling Han said with a smile. However, his tone was naturally filled with utter disbelief. Shen Kuo really wanted to slap this guy to death. However, when he thought about the movement techniques of this seed, he could only forcefully suppress his urge. Moreover, if Ling Han hadn't come from a small world and had a clean background, how could they dare to deal with a seed like this? Which seed didn't have a heavenly body tier connection? Ling Han, the Rain Emperor, and Ding Ping's situation was far too unique. 3 seed-level prodigies had actually appeared from the same small world. He calmed his emotions, and said, you're temporarily innocent, but the ownership of the 1000-source true fluid is still a matter of debate. Thus, I want you to hand over the 1000-source true fluid first. If it belongs to you, we'll naturally return it to you. At the end of the day, it was all about the 1000-source true fluid. This was very normal. How could Ling Han alone be worthy of the Gao faction making such a move? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, Milord, are you saying that the 1000-source true fluid might have been obtained by that evil sect? Ha, Milord, you really know how to joke. How could a bunch of weaklings like them possibly obtain the 1000-source true fluid? What more 4 drops? Oh, that's right. I've heard that Yang Hao also obtained 2 drops in the past. If these 4 drops were obtained by some evil sect, wouldn't that mean that they're even more powerful than Yang Hao? Weaklings. Shen Kuo and the others all grimaced. They were actually all members of the Gao faction. Although Ling Han hadn't mentioned their names, he had still insulted all of them. A measly mountain river tier cultivator was practically pointing at their noses and calling them weaklings. How could they accept this? This person with a sharp tongue. Chapter 908. If Small Tower had an expression, it would definitely be dumbfounded now. It was speechless for a while, and then said, "This descendant of the white tiger is probably injured in the brain." It really thought of itself as a cat, a bit brainless. "Little cat, come quickly, big sister also has a ball." Li Weiwei picked up the ball on the ground, and then threw it. The fat cat couldn't control itself and pounced, then meowed loudly in anger, secretly hating. Why did it have no resistance against furry ball-like things? Ling Han smiled, and said, "Fat cat, let's be friends. In the future, you'll have your fill of the roasted meat here. How about it? Though you can snatch it, I can also not take it out. Furthermore, I can eat elsewhere." If it hadn't tasted the delicacies in the Black Tower, then the fat cat would naturally be dismissive. What a joke, wanting to be friends with this king with just some food. But now, when it thought of the food in the Black Tower, it salivated. That was why it had stayed here early today, wasn't it, to snatch food? It couldn't help but feel troubled. As a white tiger, its pride made it want to be tough, and not bend over for 5 buckets of rice, but as a foodie, it couldn't resist such temptation. "Isn't it just becoming friends? I don't need any benefits from you," Ling Han said with a smile. Meow. The fat cat nodded, feeling that what Ling Han said was very reasonable. Anyway, it didn't need to pay anything. Li Weiwei and Ji Yun were both shocked. One had to know that this cat was described by Zhang Deman to be incredibly terrifying, an existence that definitely couldn't be provoked, but now it actually agreed to be friends with Ling Han. They were completely speechless. Most importantly, this white tiger was too young, and easily tricked. Otherwise, if it was a cunning fellow like the rabbit, would you be tricked? Ling Han took out more food, not just roasted meat, but also made other delicious meals. Using 1,000-year-old spirit herbs as supplementary materials was an incomparably extravagant thing in a small world, but in the immortal realm, it was much more normal. This was because the lifespan of immortals was really long, and powerful forces could even divide out a large area to cultivate spirit herbs. If they cultivated it for a few thousand years, they could also harvest a lot of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs every year. However, in terms of quantity, it could not compare to the output of the Black Tower no matter what. Thus, even if Li Weiwei was the daughter of the left minister, she could not help but sigh in admiration when she saw how extravagant Ling Han was. Is the small world so rich? This meal was naturally enjoyed by everyone. Although Fat Cat also belonged to the Tsundere type, that was the pride of a divine beast, and was a natural trait. However, after eating the meal, it also relaxed, lying lazily on its back, allowing Li Weiwei and Ji Yun to stroke its belly with their hands. It was extremely carefree. A dignified descendant of a divine beast was actually bribed by a single meal. How shameful. Ling Han also summoned the gold-seeking rat, but did not let Li Weiwei and Ji Yun discover it. They only thought that he had brought it out from the house. Once it came to the rat, Fat Cat immediately reacted instinctively. It suddenly flipped over and crawled up, about to do its job. Meanwhile, the gold-seeking rat, with a paw, lay stiffly on the ground, pretending to be dead. Scared me to death. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "This is a pet that I've raised, don't scare it." Only then did Fat Cat lick its paws in a reserved manner. Since it had agreed to be friends, it had to give him some face. The gold-seeking rat suddenly scuttled onto Ling Han's shoulder, and pointed a small paw at Fat Cat. It squeaked, 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 meaning that this big guy was going to eat Fat Cat, and Master had to stand up for Fat Cat. Li Weiwei and Ji Yun both clicked their tongues in wonder. A demonic beast with intelligence was not rare. In truth, after reaching the shattering void tier, most demonic beasts could speak, and after reaching the immortal level, they could even take human form. However, such an adorable rat baby was really rare, causing their beautiful eyes to light up. They fought over it, and the gold-seeking rat was so scared that it pretended to be dead again, thinking that these two girls wanted to eat Fat Cat. During this meal, Ling Han and the two girls agreed on a business alliance. The two girls would be responsible for opening up channels, while he would be responsible for supplying goods. The income would be split 50-50, with Ling Han taking half, and Li Weiwei and Ji Yun sharing the other half equally. Li Weiwei was in high spirits. This was a great opportunity to change her image. In her old father's eyes, she was definitely someone who only knew how to spend money, but who didn't have a bit of pride. Li Weiwei wanted to prove that she was not a rich young lady who only knew how to rely on her father's good fortune. She was full of fighting spirit, and very soon left with Ji Yun, eager to go all out. Meanwhile, Ling Han strolled towards the library of the Northern Institution. The library of the library naturally had an endless collection of books, including cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemy techniques, and formations. However, the academy would not let you obtain them for free. You had to put in effort to earn points, and use points to exchange for these things. Of course, this was targeted at immortal level. Shattering void tier level secret techniques were not taken seriously by the academy at all, and any academy disciple could browse through them as they pleased. Thus, Ling Han did not have to worry about not having enough points, as he did not even have the right to enter. Points. I'll have to think about it in the future, Ling Han thought. Unless he took on some big shot in the academy as his master, he could only think of a way to obtain immortal level cultivation techniques by himself. This could be auctioned off with true origin stones, but cultivation techniques that could be sold in the auction house would definitely be incomparably precious. Even if he opened up a sales channel for the food in the Black Tower, it was absolutely impossible for him to compete with the wealth of the rich in the imperial capital. At least, before alchemy was established, he could only think of ways to earn points, and then exchange them for cultivation techniques from the library. He did not want to take on anyone as his master. After sitting on the throne of the country, his personality had also changed, and he had the arrogance of an emperor. In this world, who could be the teacher of an emperor? He came to the door of the library, and saw an old man sitting at the door. His head full of withered white hair covered his face, and his upper body continuously swayed back and forth, but the amplitude was very small, as if he was sleeping soundly. Ling Han thought for a moment, and circled around the old man's side. Pa, a walking stick stretched out and blocked his way. Brat, want to steal a book? The old man suddenly raised his head. I dare not, I just want to borrow it to read, Ling Han said. The old man looked at Ling Han deeply for a while, and said, press your palm on that rock, and you will naturally know how many floors you can enter and what kind of secret techniques you can read. Thank you, senior, for your guidance. Ling Han nodded, and looked at a stone pillar ahead. It was about half a person's height, and at the top was a piece of jade, slightly larger than a palm. He reached out and pressed down, and instantly felt his consciousness go slightly numb, then immediately returned to normal. If it were not for his extremely sensitive spirit, he might not have realized it at all. Seeing Ling Han reveal a look of surprise, the old man could not help but make a sound of surprise, and said, you can actually sense a sliver of your spirit being drawn away? Ling Han's expression instantly changed. Spirit was very important, but now a sliver was actually drawn away. Don't worry, it won't affect you. The old man smiled, and then waved his hand. Go in. After Ling Han disappeared, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, this brat's spirit is actually so sensitive. It has actually made me appreciate his talent a little. It's worth observing him. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 909. Ling Han could only wander around the first floor of the library, but the books on this floor were completely open to him, without any reading restrictions. Obviously, these were all techniques and techniques below the immortal level. Ling Han was not in a hurry to find alchemy techniques, and as he walked, he slowly flipped through them. The origin power technique he was cultivating now was definitely not the best, so it would be difficult to reach the extra 4 stars of origin power with the extreme yang technique. He might stop at 18 or 19 stars of strength. Thus, he also planned to change cultivation techniques. Changing cultivation techniques would definitely have a considerable impact on the advancement of his cultivation, but in order to break through the limit of 20 stars of strength, this was obviously a must. The Scarlet Heaven Academy, or at least the Northern Academy, was very generous. There was a large number of cultivation techniques here, all of which were perfect, and could be used to cultivate to the limit of the Shattering Void tier. And after reaching this step, one could apply to the academy, and there would be elites who would choose cultivation techniques to teach and protect them to break through to the Mountain River tier. After entering the Mountain River tier, everything would depend on oneself. This was also the eternal true meaning of the world of martial art. Cultivation was ultimately one's own matter. If you could not understand a profound principle, no one could explain it to you clearly. You could only think about it yourself. It could be comprehended in a few days or years, or it could be stuck on this threshold for a lifetime. Cultivating the habit of relying on others was practically fatal for a cultivator. Ling Han searched for a long time, but did not find the most suitable cultivation technique for himself. It was relatively easy to push his strength to 9 stars of Shattering Void tier, 10 stars, or even 11 stars, but 12 or 13 stars was extremely difficult, and 1 more star was like reaching the heavens. He thought for a while, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He thought, now that I have complete 6 elements, why not cultivate 6 different cultivation techniques at the same time and combine them? With this thought, he suddenly felt a burning passion in his heart, and could not control it no matter what. He searched for 6 similar level cultivation techniques, but they were divided into the 5 elements and the 6 elements of lightning, and then memorized them one by one in his mind. The books here couldn't be taken out, and unlike traditional books, these spells were all recorded on bones. Some were beast bones, and some were even human bones. It was a little creepy to hold them in one's hands. When his fingers touched it, his bones glowed and his cultivation technique appeared. They were all interweaving mysterious patterns and weren't real words. There were also diagrams of meridians that depicted the circulation route of origin energy. He even had to open up some hidden meridians in the human body. So there are such things. This was an eye-opener for Ling Han. He was born in a small world, and even though he had lived 2 lives, he could not change this fact. Limited by the environment of the small world, he had only read 2 of the 10-level manuals. One was from the sea race, and the other was from the 5 sections. These cultivation techniques could at most allow him to cultivate up to the strength of 11 stars of Shattering Void tier, which was still 2 stars away from the limit of origin power. Ling Han was intoxicated by them. He was already standing at the height of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and these cultivation techniques were only a reference for him, not a difficult problem. This made him scratch his ears and cheeks repeatedly, unable to contain his joy. He was confident that after combining the 6 cultivation techniques, he could push open the door to the strength of 13 stars of origin power. There was no need to worry about physical arts. The 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was definitely awesome enough, and could reach the extreme of brute force. After half a day, he closed his eyes in satisfaction. After exhaling a long breath, he revealed a sliver of a smile, and then put these bone books back in their original places, and went to search for alchemy techniques. He found it. Ling Han found an ancient book. This was a real book, and when he opened it, it recorded the concoction methods of level 10 alchemical pills, and some level 10 alchemical pills were effective even for mountain river tier cultivators. For example, replenishing spirit pill. Ling Han was not greedy, and decided to only study this pill recipe for the time being. He memorized the pill recipe. This was very simple. You only needed to have a good memory, and this was not a problem for most martial artists. The difficulty lay in extracting the patterns from the medicinal ingredients and interweaving them when concocting the pill. This was too easy to make a mistake. If one was not careful, and the interweaving of the patterns was wrong, then the whole thing would be ruined. Thus, this pill recipe only recorded a simple half page of the ingredients, but used a whole 18 pages on how to interweave the patterns, and this was only for level 10 alchemical pills. Immortal-grade alchemical pills were even more terrifying. One book could only record one pill recipe, and this book was definitely ridiculously thick. Thankfully, immortals lived long enough, and had enough time to learn more pill recipes. Otherwise, if it was a shattering void tier cultivator, they might only be able to learn a dozen or so immortal-grade pill recipes in their lifetime. After another half a day, Ling Han finally closed the book, closed his eyes, and digested this pill recipe. It was only a replenishing spirit pill recipe, but because it could have a certain effect on mountain river tier cultivators, this pill recipe was naturally complicated, and could be regarded as a semi-divine pill. For Ling Han, who was only in the shattering void tier, it was considerably difficult to concoct. The strength of my spirit has been greatly improved by the reincarnation tea, and I've also cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, so my spirit is stable and qualified to concoct the replenishing spirit pill. Ling Han was very confident. However, concocting pills is a process of trial and error. From failure to success, it might only take a few times, or maybe a few dozen times. I only have 2 true origin stones in my hands, so I don't know how many portions of ingredients I can buy. He put the ancient book back in its original place, then turned and left, planning to leave the academy to buy the ingredients for concocting the replenishing spirit pill. When he arrived at the door, the white-haired old man glanced at him, and when he walked out of the library, he suddenly said, "This old man's surname is Su, you can call me Old Man Su. If you have time, come and visit. This old man likes to chat with young people." Ling Han was startled. He turned around, bowed slightly to the old man, and said, "Yes, senior." Although this old man's aura was not obvious, and he looked like a rotten old man, would there really be useless people in the Scarlet Heaven Academy? He was full of pride, but this and arrogance were two different things. Old Man Su waved at Ling Han, and when Ling Han turned and left again, he murmured, "This brat actually plans to cultivate 6 cultivation techniques at the same time." Not many people know that it is impossible to rush to the pinnacle of origin power by simply cultivating one cultivation technique, but a cultivator from a small world actually managed to guess it by accident. How interesting. This is certainly luck, but luck is also a part of strength. If not for this old man, how could he have fallen to this state? This is fate, this is luck. Perhaps, this old man's regret can be made up for by this brat. When Old Man Su said the last sentence, his eyes suddenly emitted a bright light, and a frightening aura circulated all over his body. However, a pitch-black iron chain suddenly appeared, tightly wrapping around his chest, causing him to cough up blood continuously. Behind him, 4 stars actually appeared, each of them the same size. If anyone saw this, they would definitely be so shocked that their scalps would go numb. Who would have thought that an old man guarding the library of the Northern Institution was actually a supreme elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier? Chapter 9-10. After Ling Han left the library, he went straight out of the academy and wandered around the imperial city, looking for a medicine store. The cultivation of martial artists couldn't be separated from medicinal pills, but the concoction of medicinal pills could only be found by alchemists, which limited the number of medicine stores. Ling Han found a few, but saw that these medicine stores were too small, selling medicinal pills below heaven grade, so it was impossible to buy the concoction materials of replenishing spirit pill. Paying with gold and silver here was enough to know, the level was too low. Ling Han searched for a while before finally finding a medicine store with a large shop and a big signboard. Before entering, he saw 4 guards standing at the door, all of them in the shattering void tier. He knew that this medicine store definitely had what he needed. As expected, the medicinal pills and medicinal ingredients here were very complete, and the highest level medicinal pills even reached the 7th level of divine grade. What did this mean? That was used by elites in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. If it was Ling Han taking one now, he would definitely explode and die. This also applied to true origin stones. The spiritual chi contained within was too dense, and if he refined it now, it would be courting death, it wouldn't have the effect of increasing his cultivation at all. Thus, this cultivation treasure could only be used as money now. Ling Han, however, had no reluctance. As the saying went, if you can't give up the child, you can't catch the wolf. As long as he concocted the replenishing spirit pill, it would bring him endless true origin stones. Fortunately, the purchasing power of true origin stones was still considerable. A standard-size true origin stone was about half a kilogram, which could buy 5 replenishing spirit pills, and to buy raw materials, it could be as many as 10 portions. The concept of 10 portions didn't mean that only 10 pills could be concocted, but that each portion could at most concoct 5 pills. This was calculated based on the size of a standard alchemy furnace, and it also involved the difficulty of interweaving vein-like patterns. This was the standard. However, very few alchemists could concoct all the medicinal pills in a furnace. 5 pills was the limit, and concocting 3 pills was above the standard. Considering the cost, as long as 10 portions of materials could concoct 5 pills, a mere 10% success rate would be enough to recoup the cost. From this point, it was the same in the immortal realm. Alchemy was an extremely profitable profession. Unfortunately, it was too difficult to become an alchemist, and alchemists with a high success rate were even rarer. After knowing that Ling Han wanted to concoct the replenishing spirit pill, the shop assistant was very enthusiastic, and said that if Ling Han managed to concoct the pill, they could buy it, but they wouldn't accept the price of 1 true origin stone for 5 pills. Instead, they would exchange 7 pills for 1. They have to make some money, right? Shattering Void tier cultivators were definitely the largest group of cultivators in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Thus, replenishing spirit pills were extremely popular, and no matter how many there was no need to worry that they wouldn't sell. On the contrary, this kind of elixir's low price had always been small profits but quick sales, which was more effective in attracting customers. Sometimes, they would even conduct promotions at a loss. Ling Han did not care about this. Not only did he buy ready-made materials, but he also bought seeds. With something as good as the Black Tower, it would be an idiot not to use it. It wouldn't be long before he would have an endless supply of raw materials, and he wouldn't need to come here to buy them anymore. Moreover, the replenishing spirit pill was only a 10th tier medicinal pill after all. Most of the medicinal ingredients used were only required to be 100 years old. Only a few medicinal ingredients required to be 200 years old. For the Black Tower, it would only take 2 months. Ling Han spent 2 true origin stones. One was to buy 10 portions of ingredients, and the other was to buy a large amount of seeds. After returning to the academy, he began to immerse himself in alchemy. Things like purifying ingredients were naturally not difficult for him at all. He took a deep breath. The next step was the main point, alchemy. Open the furnace. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han did not need to worry at all about the extreme temperature of the flames. Here, he was a true god. Hung, the flames raged. Ling Han threw the medicinal ingredients into the alchemy furnace one by one. Under the refinement of the true fire, the energy in the medicinal ingredients began to evaporate, and one after another, vein-like patterns intertwined. Ling Han moved and reorganized these vein-like patterns to meet the requirements of the replenishing spirit pill. Only then could the effects be displayed. He continuously threw in medicinal ingredients, and the vein-like patterns became more and more complicated. With a pang, Ling Han sighed dejectedly. The furnace explosion had failed. As the Alchemy Emperor, how long had it been since he had tasted the taste of failure in alchemy? Ling Han could not help but think of the past. He swam freely in the ocean of alchemy, and furnace explosions were a common occurrence. Without so many failures, how could there be the Alchemy Emperor later on? He did not immediately begin the refinement of the second portion of ingredients. Instead, he closed his eyes and recalled the details from before, what led to his failure. If he could not figure this out, then refining 100 times would be 100 failures. After a long time, Ling Han finally began the second refinement. Peng, he failed again. However, if there was someone present, they would discover that the point at which Ling Han failed this time was later than the last time. In other words, he had improved. After summarizing the failures, he would try again. Peng, he failed for the third time, but it did not matter, he had improved again. The fourth time, he still failed. The fifth time, he still failed. The sixth time, he also failed. However, a smile appeared at the corner of Ling Han's mouth. He had already forgotten the time, and was completely immersed in alchemy. He had enough confidence that he would definitely succeed on the seventh time. Come. He was careful, and his hands continuously moved, sending out one force after another to adjust the veins of the medicinal ingredients, causing the different medicinal ingredients to resonate and interweave into an effect that a single medicinal ingredient could not have. Half a day later. Ling Han's expression was solemn, it was the most crucial moment. Open, he shouted lightly, and his hands instantly moved countless times, and 3 flashes of flames shot out. 3 Fire Guide, this was a secret technique that he had created himself. He suddenly opened the lid of the furnace, and saw that there were 5 round, jade-green medicinal pills in the furnace, but as the lid was opened, 4 of them simultaneously shattered, leaving only the last one that rose up as if it had a life of its own and was about to escape. Ling Han hurriedly grabbed it, and then exited the Black Tower, planning to let it experience the pill tribulation. However, he stood in the courtyard, and there was no sign of thunderclouds gathering. Could it be that it was refined in the Black Tower, and was ignored by the heaven and earth? Meow. A very angry cat's cry was heard, and the large fat cat suddenly pounced over, waving its paw to claw at Ling Han. Hey, aren't we good friends? Ling Han hurriedly dodged. Meow, 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 the fat cat called out continuously. It said that it waited for you for 7 days, but you still haven't appeared. Where's the promised meat? Small Tower said. The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched slightly. You can even speak cat language. What can I know? Small Tower said proudly. Ling Han was suddenly stunned, 7 days actually passed. He grabbed the fat cat and said, Okay, I'll immediately treat you to meat. Stop your hand, no, stop your paw, or else how am I going to make food for you? The fat cat finally stopped, and squatted down, looking reserved and proud. Human, you are this king's cat slaves. Chapter 9-11. Ling Han refined another drop of indestructible true fluid, and his injuries were immediately brought under control. In fact, they were even beginning to improve. However, after using 2 drops of indestructible true fluid in such a short period of time, the effects of his injuries instantly plummeted. The second drop of indestructible true fluid was unable to completely heal his injuries. Instead, it only brought them under control and made them much better. However, there was still a long way to go before he was completely healed. Even so, this kind of recovery ability still left everyone dumbfounded. It was too shocking. Venerable Trinity's interest was also piqued, and he said, "This young man is quite remarkable." With how high his standards were, being praised as remarkable by him was truly remarkable. A sense of jealousy involuntarily welled up in Yang Hao's heart. He was afraid that Venerable Trinity had also fallen for Ling Han's natural talent and wanted to take him as his disciple. If that were to happen, not only would he not be able to take revenge, but he would also gain a powerful enemy. This made him feel extremely uneasy. Sure enough, Venerable Trinity continued, "Young man, are you willing to take me as your master?" If he had asked Ling Han whether he was willing to take him as his master right from the start, perhaps Ling Han would have accepted him as his disciple. Even if he wasn't sincere about taking him as his master, he would at least be able to use this as an excuse to tide over this difficult situation. However, Venerable Trinity had restrained Empress Wan Xing and allowed Yang Hao to beat her up. This was unacceptable to Ling Han. After beating up his future wife, he still wanted him to take him as his master. And Yang Hao wanted to become his senior brother. What kind of joke was this? Ling Han chuckled, and said, "A teacher must have moral character." Venerable Trinity, do you think you have the moral character to be a teacher? Absolute silence instantly fell over the surroundings. Is there something wrong with my ears? Why do I seem to have heard this brat berating Venerable Trinity? Gasp! What audacity! There's actually someone in this galaxy who dares to question Venerable Trinity's moral character in front of him? Is this a joke? Insolence! Hua Yongning and Gao Feng shouted in unison. At first, they had disdained to show their might to a mountain river tier cultivator. However, this mountain river tier cultivator had insulted their master. As such, they naturally had to step in. Meanwhile, Yang Hao breathed a sigh of relief. In this case, there was no way that Ling Han could become Venerable Trinity's disciple no matter how talented he was. He couldn't help but curse Ling Han's stupidity in his mind. A true man should know when to yield and when to stand tall. Yet, he was trying to show off his might before he was powerful enough. Wasn't this seeking death? He was afraid that Venerable Trinity would cherish his talent, so he was the first to pounce toward Ling Han. He roared, "You dare to insult my master? You're seeking death." Divine patterns intertwined as he struck out with his palm. This was a full-powered strike. He would kill Ling Han to rid himself of any future troubles. Wang! Multiple projections of giant snakes appeared behind Empress Wan Xing. Each of them was tens of thousands of meters tall, and they exuded an ancient and primordial aura. The moment the giant snakes appeared, Venerable Trinity's restriction on her immediately disappeared. She stretched out a hand and struck out at Yang Hao. Not good. Hua Yongning and Gao Feng hurriedly interfered. If they allowed Yang Hao to be killed by Empress Wan Xing in front of them, they would definitely suffer. Not only would they have to pay with their lives, but they would also definitely lose Venerable Trinity's favor. At that time, they would no longer have any chance of obtaining Venerable Trinity's true inheritance. This was something they definitely couldn't tolerate. The two heavenly body tier elites moved to intercept Empress Wan Xing. Although they had moved late, they were closer to Yang Hao. Thus, they managed to block this attack in time. Boom! The three elites clashed. Peng, 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 peng. A gust of wind swept out, forming a terrifying shockwave that instantly shattered the palace hall. Peng! Because Yang Hao was closer, he was instantly sent flying by the shockwave. Pa, pa, pa! Several of his bones were broken. Fortunately, if it weren't for the fact that this was only a shockwave, he would definitely have died. Hua Yongning and Gao Feng were both astonished. They were clearly all at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, so why was there such a huge gap between them? Even when they teamed up, they were almost no match for her. They could conclude that she hadn't reached the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier, so why was she so powerful? It had to be known that this was only a divine sense imprint of hers, so how powerful would her true body be? Huh? Young lady, you're from the 9 snake tribe? Xiao. A figure descended from the sky. His entire body was wrapped in divine light, and it was unclear how tall he was. However, the aura he exuded was incredibly terrifying. It was Venerable Trinity. This eternal river tier elite had actually appeared. One had to realize that he had only casually attacked from afar, and he had already suppressed Empress Yuan Xing. Although she had broken free, he only needed to unleash another attack. However, he had appeared in person. There could only be one reason for this. He had discovered that Empress Yuan Xing's identity in the Nine Snake tribe was far too astonishing. Who would have thought that an ancient divine tribe would actually appear in my lifetime? Venerable Trinity said excitedly. His eyes were fixed on Empress Yuan Xing, and it was as if flowers had sprouted from her face. Empress Yuan Xing's expression froze. Although she had unleashed the power of the Nine Snake tribe and broken free from Venerable Trinity's control, he had only unleashed a casual attack from afar. He hadn't used his full power at all. There was a vast gulf between the heavenly body tier and the eternal river tier. Even her Nine Snake tribe bloodline couldn't bridge this gulf. Moreover, she hadn't reached the pinnacle level of the heavenly body tier yet. Moreover, this was only a clone of hers. She couldn't defeat him head-on. So what? She asked calmly as she moved closer to Ling Han. If Venerable Trinity attacked again, she could hide in the Black Tower with Ling Han. Ancient Divine Tribe? Ha, ha ha ha. Venerable Trinity roared with laughter. It was clear that he was incredibly excited. In fact, the divine light radiating from his body had even faded, revealing a thin and shriveled elder. It was clear just how excited he was to be able to cause the most powerful elite in this galaxy to lose his composure. However, the more excited Venerable Trinity was, the more apprehensive Ling Han and Empress Yuan Xing felt. This signified that Venerable Trinity was extremely concerned about their safety. Master. Yang Hao slowly regained consciousness and struggled to his feet. Although a few of his bones were broken, he could still move normally with his origin power. In fact, he could still fight, but this would definitely affect his battle prowess. Venerable Trinity ignored him. He merely stared at Empress Yuan Xing, and said, "Young lady, I'll take your bloodline." Sure enough, this old man had been affected by Empress Yuan Xing's bloodline. Although he didn't know how he had done this was definitely not good news for Empress Yuan Xing. Let's go. Ling Han pounced over, wanting to draw Empress Yuan Xing into the Black Tower. Young man, wait at the side. Venerable Trinity didn't even need to move. His divine sense was enough to completely imprison Ling Han. He then stretched out a hand and grabbed at Empress Yuan Xing. Yang Hao was also filled with rage. Since Venerable Trinity had taken Empress Yuan Xing, he would vent his anger on Ling Han. Die! He pounced over, his fist flying toward Ling Han's head. Ling Han! A voice suddenly traveled over. It was so far away that it seemed as if it had come from the other side of the sky. Ling Han! However, this voice was just a few feet away from him. Pang! A figure crashed down from the sky. No one noticed how she had appeared, but coincidentally, she landed on Yang Hao's body. She stomped him into the ground, creating a human-shaped crater. Ling Han, Niu Fei is here, the figure called out cheerfully. Chapter 9:12. Luo Lai hurriedly returned home and ran to see Luo Ba. He knew that he wasn't as smart as his elder brother, and letting Luo Ba deal with it would give Ling Han the most severe blow. Brother, he said, panting. Descendants of nobles like them usually wouldn't stay in the academy. Their families had better cultivation conditions, and they only went to the academy once every 5 days to listen to lectures. He told her what he had learned earlier. After Luo Ba heard it, he instantly laughed loudly. Ling Han, oh Ling Han, this time, you've finally fallen into my hands. How should I deal with you? Brother, what do you plan to do? Luo Lai asked hurriedly. He also hated Ling Han to the bone. Luo Ba thought for a moment, and said, to catch a thief, we have to catch him first. Let someone stand guard, and the next time Ling Han appears, we'll catch him first. Brother, that brat might also be my turn. Maybe he'll change the place to sell pills next time. Luo Lai was still quite smart. Luo Ba nodded, and said, we'll have to prepare both ways. We'll wait until before the first monthly examination. If we can't catch him first, we'll go directly to complain. Anyway, with that shop assistant as a witness, Ling Han can't escape either. He pondered for a moment, and said, for this matter, we'll have to ask the 17th clan elder to act. He's a rotating elder of the Northern Institution, and with his cooperation, it won't be difficult to pin Ling Han down. Yes, let him die. Luo Lai said with red eyes. The dignified young master of the Luo clan was actually beaten to the point of kneeling on the ground. What a great humiliation. If Ling Han didn't die, he wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Luo Ba sneered. Merely selling pills wasn't enough to make Ling Han lose his life. After all, he was a 4-star genius, which was rarely seen in history. But rules were rules, after all. With the 17th clan elder stepping out to pressure and make a big deal out of a small matter, he could expel Ling Han from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. And without the Scarlet Heaven Academy as a backer, a shattering void tier cultivator from a small world was nothing, and he could be easily trampled to death. Daring to steal my limelight, this is the price you have to pay. Luo Ba's eyes emitted a cold glint. The first was Ling Han, and the second was Ma Xing. He would take down both of them. Although the Qing family was not as powerful as the Luo family, it was not something he could mess with easily. Qing Haofei could only let it go. Luo Lai, on the other hand, only wanted to kill Ling Han. He sneered and couldn't wait to see his enemy being trampled under his feet. When Ling Han returned to the academy, it just so happened that Li Weiwei and Ji Yun had arrived together. The first batch of ingredients had already been sold out, and they had sold for a total of 36 true origin stones. Ling Han took half of it, 18. Li Weiwei and Ji Yun split the remaining 9 equally. This was actually already a huge sum of money. It should be known that even though Ling Han and Ji Yun were the top 3 prodigies among the new students, they were only given 2 pieces by the academy every month, which showed how precious they were. Li Weiwei was even more pleased. Although she definitely did not lack 9 true origin stones, she had earned them with her own abilities, which made her extremely happy. Oh, that's right, you've already missed 2 of Big Sister Shui's classes. Big Sister Shui is very angry, so just wait to be beaten, Li Weiwei said, taking pleasure in Ling Han's misfortune. Working together with Ling Han to earn money was one thing, but being unhappy with Ling Han was another. The thought of giving Ling Han a good lesson had never once disappeared from her mind. Ling Han sighed. These few days, he had only cared about concocting pills, and he still had to concoct pills for a few more days. No matter what, he had to digest the medicinal ingredients he had just bought. Moreover, in order to earn money, he could only concoct pills. Who asked him to not have a father like the left minister and a mother like the right minister? After the 2 girls had a meal, they played with the big fat cat for a while, and then took a spatial spirit tool full of ingredients and left. They did not ask why Ling Han's spatial spirit tool was so big, and how many things could be stored in it. After all, they were not people with big breasts and no brains. Ling Han began to concoct pills again. In his previous life, he had been an alchemist for 200 years, and this kind of identity had already flowed into his bones. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed very quickly. This was a level 10 medicinal pill, and even Ling Han had no way of speeding up the time. Concocting 1 furnace would take at least half a day, so after concocting 10 furnaces, another 5 days had passed. But the harvest was also very huge. Other than the first 2 furnaces which had only produced 4 pills, the following 8 furnaces had all produced a perfect 5 pills. This was the true alchemy emperor. Ling Han was also very satisfied. This time, he had a total of 48 replenishing spirit pills. Even if he exchanged 7 pills for 1 true origin stone, he would still be able to sell 7 and earn 6 times the profit. Huge profits, it was really huge profits. Of course, this was only limited to an alchemy emperor like him. For an ordinary alchemist, it would already be good if they could earn 20 to 30%, just like the first time he had concocted pills. He did not intend to sell these at the pharmacy. 7 pills for 1 was too much of a scam. There was a black market in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and students would all go there to sell and exchange goods. Everyone covered their faces with black scarves, and they only asked about the goods without asking about the identity of the seller. If they hit the jackpot, they would pay up and the deal would be concluded. Ling Han was confident that even if he sold 5 pills for 1 true origin stone, there would still be people fighting over them. The reason was very simple, because he had concocted these pills. He had tasted one before, and the effect of the replenishing spirit pill he had concocted was at least 30% better than the one issued by the Academy. This was also because 5 pills were only sold for 1 true origin stone. It would be strange if they did not go crazy over it. At night, Ling Han found a cloak and a black scarf. After going out, he put on the cloak and the black scarf in a corner and came to the foot of a small mountain. The imperial capital was too big, and so was the academy. There were 3 mountains in the academy, and this was the smallest one. At night, there would be a market here, but everyone would hide their identity. No one knew when this tradition started, but the academy did not care, so it was tacitly accepted. Of course, the black market was open at night. It was very dark here, and only the moon cast light. There was no blazing crystal that could be used. This was an illuminating object from the immortal realm, and could emit bright light in the darkness. It could also be adjusted, and was very practical. But here, there was not even a torch, let alone a blazing crystal. Low profile and mystery were the main themes here. Ling Han came to a corner and sat down. He put up a wooden sign in front of him, and wrote, "Replenishing Spirit Pill, starting at 5, 1 true origin stone, extraordinary quality." He sat down, but when the black-robed men passed by, they only glanced at him, and some even snorted. Buying things here was either for cheap or extremely rare things. Otherwise, why wouldn't I buy it outside for the same price? It was also safe, and I wouldn't be unable to find the culprit if something went wrong. Just because you say the quality is extraordinary, it's extraordinary. Ling Han sat straight for 2 hours before he saw an incomparably tall and sturdy person walk over. Even the cloak could not hide his body, and it was really too shocking. That person stood in front of Ling Han and said, "Where's the goods? I want them." Ling Han nodded, took out a pill bottle, and threw it over. There was only 1 replenishing spirit pill inside. Chapter 9:13. The man took the pill bottle, pulled out the stopper, and smelled it. Immediately, he looked pleasantly surprised. This was indeed a replenishing spirit pill, and the quality was quite good, more fragrant than what he usually ate. He poured out the pill, observed it carefully, then nodded, and said, "If it's all of this quality, give me 5. Ling Han handed out another pill bottle, then took back the pill from before, and said, "Thank you for your patronage, you can check again." The man didn't dare to be generous here. If he turned around, it would be a breach of contract. After a careful inspection, he nodded in satisfaction, and threw a true origin stone to Ling Han. Ling Han also inspected it. It was genuine, but it was also possible that it had been used before, so its value was naturally completely different. Both sides nodded in satisfaction, and the transaction was considered complete. With 1 person to taste it, there would naturally be a second and a third. Ling Han left 3 replenishing spirit pills for the first time, and he ate 1 himself. Added with the 48 pills from the second time, it was exactly 10 portions. 10 times the profit. This was indeed very satisfying, but even if he could concoct 10 in a day, it would still take 5 days, too much time. If other alchemists knew of Ling Han's thoughts, they would definitely want to strangle him to death. You earned 10 times the profit in 5 days and still thought it was too little, be careful not to be struck by lightning. Ling Han nodded internally. He earned little because the replenishing spirit pill itself wasn't worth much. If it was a level 10 divine pill or a top-notch level 20 divine pill, then how much could you earn from concocting a cauldron? Similarly, 10 times the profit would be in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of true origin stones. It couldn't be helped, he was really a small alchemist now. Give me one. A woman's voice sounded in Ling Han's ears. It was a little cold, but still very pleasant to listen to. Ling Han just happened to have one last portion left, so he handed it to the other party. After both sides completed the transaction, he patted the dust on his body and turned to leave. For the time being, he didn't plan to spend more time on alchemy. He had to quickly grasp and fuse the 6 cultivation techniques, rush to the strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier as soon as possible, and then break through to the Mountain River tier. Without entering the immortal level, he was still an ant. He still had to refine it. He had to make sure that he could refine 1 pill a day to improve his soul power. The woman opened the pill bottle, took out a pill, and swallowed it. Immediately, a look of surprise appeared on her face. The effect is actually 30% of a normal replenishing spirit pill. However, the replenishing spirit pill is not a high-grade pill. Not many alchemists are willing to spend time researching and improving the pill recipe. To be able to increase the pill's effect by 30%, he must have used some kind of special alchemy technique. Under the veil, her beautiful face revealed a look of shock. If a pill formula was improved, then it would only benefit a single type of pill, but if a revolutionary pill refining method appeared, then it would benefit the entire alchemy world. Fortunately, I remembered his smell. She revealed a smug expression. Her name was Gu Lingyu, and she was the last of the 3 great beauties of the Imperial City. However, she had entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy 2 years ago. However, she did not belong to any of the academies in the north, south, east, or west. Instead, she was enrolled in the alchemy branch, a branch that only recruited alchemists. In the field of alchemy, she had outstanding talent, which was related to her outstanding sense of smell. She could remember any kind of smell that she had smelled. For an alchemist, this was a very impressive talent. If he is that alchemist, then we can have a spar. Gu Lingyu immediately became excited. She used her delicate nose to sniff along the way, tracking Ling Han. Very soon, she arrived at the dormitory of the Northern Institution. At first, she thought that Ling Han was just passing by, but when she discovered that Ling Han had entered a courtyard and did not come out again, she was extremely shocked. This was a cultivator, not an alchemist. She decided to wait, and first find out more about Ling Han's background. The Gu clan was also a large clan, so it was naturally very easy for them to find out more about a student's background. Ling Han did not realize that he was being stared at by a curious beauty. He once again immersed his mind in martial art, pondering over the 6 techniques returned to 1. But after a whole night, he still had no clue. After all, this was a pioneering work. 3 days later, he finally went to the classroom again. The moment he entered the classroom, he noticed that the Luo brothers had their arms crossed in front of their chests, and were smiling coldly at him. He did not take it to heart. Putting aside the background of the Luo clan, he could cripple these 2 brothers with a single hand. When it was time, Shui Yanyu also arrived. This seductive beauty swept her eyes over Ling Han, and couldn't help but smile, and say, "I didn't think that student Ling Han would appear today. I'm really flattered." This was naturally sarcasm. She had only attended a total of 4 classes, and Ling Han had missed 2. This was looking down on her too much. Ling Han hurriedly said, "These few days, I have been pondering over a method to break through to 13 stars of origin power. I still have to ask teacher for guidance later. When Shui Yanyu heard this, she nodded. If Ling Han really wanted to spend time and effort in this area, she naturally would not blame him, and would even try her best to help, but if he was only using this as a pretense, then she would definitely punish him. With such a bewitching beauty lecturing on the stage, everyone naturally could not take their eyes off her. The male students were deeply enchanted by her charm, and the female students were imitating her every move, trying to figure out how to display a woman's charm in such a flirtatious manner. Beautiful but not bewitching, charming but not seductive. The day's classes soon ended, and Ling Han walked over to ask her about the 6 techniques returned to 1. Shui Yanyu could not help but be shocked. She had never considered such a possibility. In the immortal realm, there were innumerable people who possessed multiple spirit bases. As long as they took godly medicine, even those without spirit bases could grow spirit bases. 6 spirit bases was really a small matter. And cultivating 6 cultivation techniques at the same time was not rare. The difficult part was to combine them. She had already passed the stage of the shattering void tier, but her interest was still aroused, and she began a discussion with Ling Han about whether there was a possibility of success, and if there was a possibility, how they should proceed. By drawing parallels, Ling Han benefited greatly, and finally grasped a direction, but whether he would succeed or not, and how long he would need to succeed, was another matter. Seeing them whispering to each other intimately, the boys were extremely jealous. Humph, using this kind of method to pick up girls is a good idea, but unfortunately, he chose the wrong person. Shui Yanyu is senior brother Zhao's exclusive property. Daring to pick up senior brother Zhao's girl, this brat is seeking his own death. Humph, does he think he's so great just because he's the number 1 among the new students? Come, let's go tell senior brother Zhao. Once Ling Han felt this, he immediately bade farewell to Shui Yanyu, and ran all the way back. He could not wait to give it a try. Shui Yanyu could not help but smile. This young man was really a martial arts fanatic. But after knowing that Ling Han had indeed been studying martial art these few days, she naturally would not go and punish Ling Han. However, she did not know that he had indeed been distracted, and concocted the replenishing spirit pill. Otherwise, she would definitely be shocked. What kind of monster was he? Chapter 9:14. Ling Han returned to his room and began to cultivate in seclusion, combining the 6 techniques to break through to the peak of the shattering void tier. He already had some ideas, and immediately began to study without eating or sleeping. Fortunately, it didn't matter if a shattering void tier cultivator didn't eat or drink for a few days and nights, and he was still young and full of vitality, so he wouldn't feel tired. Another 4 days passed, and he already had some preliminary results. However, the big fat cat was anxious. Didn't we agree that you would provide meat for this king? I haven't seen you for another 4 days. Are you messing with this king? Thus, when Ling Han appeared, the big fat cat immediately pounced, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. This cat demon, or rather a tiger demon, seemed like a cat no matter what. Its speed was astonishingly fast, perhaps comparable to who knows. As its claws waved, even Ling Han was hit. Fortunately, his skin was thick and his flesh thick, and the big fat cat was only throwing a tantrum, and didn't really want to hurt him, so it naturally couldn't cause any damage. Ling Han's fighting spirit was also aroused. He wanted to know how powerful this fat cat was, so he began to exchange blows with it. The fat cat was very strong. Its strength alone reached the level of 14 stars, and its battle prowess easily exceeded 20 stars. As expected of the descendant of a divine beast, that small tower said. If Ling Han controlled his strength to the same level as the fat cat, he would be beaten by the other party's speed, and he would be hit again and again. But if Ling Han increased his strength to 15 stars, the terrifying power would compress the space with that strike, and the fat cat wouldn't be able to get close at all. It would be bounced back by the shock of the air, and it would be extremely uncomfortable. In the shattering void tier, 1 star was a world of difference. The higher one's battle prowess was, the greater the gap. Ling Han believed that if he used his full strength, he wouldn't even need to land a solid hit. He only needed to shock the air, and the fat cat would probably be torn into pieces. This made him look forward to the strength of 20 stars of shattering void tier even more. After taking out food to feed the fat cat, Ling Han also had a meal and had a good sleep. No matter when, sleep was always the best way to recover energy. Once again, it was time for the class that was held every 5 days. Ling Han did not skip class, and earnestly sought guidance from Shui Yenyu in class. Though Shui Yenyu's comprehension ability was not as high as Ling Han's, she was an elite of the mountain river tier, after all. Thus, she could think from a higher perspective. She sorted out some of Ling Han's inadequacies and limitations, and was also full of praise for Ling Han at the same time. Meeting such a smart person made her really want to be a teacher, not just a part-time job like she was now. This damned blockhead, he's clearly my man, yet he dares to flirt with others. Li Weiwei saw this and couldn't help but clench her fists. Moreover, it's actually Sister Shui. He's really a toad lusting after swan meat. Weiwei, you're not jealous, are you? Ji Yun said with a smile. Li Weiwei instantly sneered. She was indeed very surprised by Ling Han's various performances, but she was the daughter of the left minister, and her standards were so high. Would she be moved so easily? She crossed her arms over her chest, and said, I'm just afraid that Sister Shui will be taken advantage of. You blockhead, your entire face is filled with lust, and you keep staring at Sister Shui's breasts. Ji Yun, couldn't help but laugh. Ling Han's eyes were very clear, and though she couldn't hear what the two of them were saying, it was obviously unrelated to the relationship between a man and a woman. No matter what, I have to make this blockhead scared this time. Li Weiwei blinked her beautiful eyes, and a mischievous thought flashed through her mind. Weiwei. Ji Yun said hurriedly. Now, the 3 of them were partners in business. Though it couldn't be said that they were making a lot of money, as the sales continued to open up, the income would also become considerable. Though this little girl didn't have any ill intentions, don't lose your sense of propriety and go overboard. Sister Yun, don't worry, I'm just going to embarrass him, nothing much will happen. You don't have to worry about your little lover. Li Weiwei said bluntly. You little girl. Ji Yun acted like she was going to hit her, and Li Weiwei hurriedly moved to block her. The 2 girls instantly became a mess, causing the bystanders to become envious, and really wanted to join in as well. Jade arms intertwined, towering peaks, how alluring. Ling Han sighed ruefully. As the saying went, one person's skill was short, but 2 people's skill was long. This discussion with the other party allowed him to benefit greatly, and he felt that he had made great progress on this path. And Shui Yenyu also discussed with him. If he could really succeed, she would let him pass on his knowledge to the others, and carry it forward. Of course, the academy would definitely reward Ling Han sufficiently. Ling Han, however, didn't mind. He could fuse 6 cultivation techniques, but that didn't mean that others could. This wasn't something that could be done just by passing on his knowledge. Rather, it required comprehension ability. If one's comprehension ability was insufficient, it would all be wasted no matter what. However, if one's comprehension ability was sufficient, this could open up a brand new door for the other party, and be of great help. After class, Ling Han once again began to cultivate madly, paying no attention to the outside world. That was his personality. In the past, in order to thoroughly research a pill recipe, he would often spend 2 or 3 months painstakingly studying it by himself. And it was precisely because of this kind of drive that he could become the alchemy emperor. Now, he had also entered into this kind of crazy mode in martial art. Another 3 days later, Ling Han finally obtained a substantial breakthrough. He could simultaneously circulate 6 cultivation techniques, and then fuse them together. However, the efficiency was relatively low, and the rate of improvement every day was very slow. If he continued at this rate, he might need 30 years to reach the consummate state of 20 stars of strength. This was actually not slow, but Ling Han wanted to find his relatives, lovers, and friends as soon as possible, and also wanted to change his status as a hostage as soon as possible. However, he had only just started, and could still improve on his cultivation techniques, so there was a very large space for improvement. Blockhead, smelly blockhead. Li Weiwei came looking for him. Ling Han just happened to have stopped cultivating, so he came out from the Black Tower, and walked over to open the door. "What is it now?" he asked. "Good news, good news." Li Weiwei tossed over a white token. It was completely snow-white, like jade yet not. "This is the token to enter the Black Jade Pool. You can enter tomorrow. However, you can only use it for 8 hours. After this time, it would instead harm the spirit and body. Also, you must leave before midnight. The day after tomorrow is the time for girls to use the Black Jade Pool. If you stay in the pool and don't come out, then you'll be struck to death." Oh, time passes so quickly. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. So it was already the beginning of the month, and it was the Northern institution's turn to enter the Black Jade Pool. Li Weiwei held back a mischievous laugh, impatient to see how Ling Han would make a fool of himself tomorrow. She really looked forward to it. Remember, the Shattering Void Tear branch only has 1 day's time. If you miss tomorrow, you'll have to wait until next month. She confirmed again. Ling Han was filled with suspicion, and said, "When did you become so kind?" "Hang, this lady is kind enough to give you an entry token, and you're still not satisfied?" Li Weiwei humphed. "All right, thank you." Ling Han waved the token in his hand. Li Weiwei hurriedly turned around and left. She was afraid that if she stayed for too long, she wouldn't be able to hold back her laughter. Chapter 9:15. Who would have thought that the once invincible majestic heaven sect would actually collapse in a single night? Venerable Trinity had disappeared, and the 24 heavenly body tier elites had also disappeared. It would be hard to believe that they hadn't died. Although the majestic heaven sect had always said that they wouldn't seek dominance, the presence of an eternal river tier elite would naturally affect the entire galaxy. Now that the elites of the majestic heaven sect had all disappeared in a single day, this naturally caused chaos in the galaxy. The long-awaited super war was about to break out. Even planets would invade other planets, and it would not just be limited to one continent. However, in such a great war, true elites would also stand out. After all, how could a supreme prodigy emerge from a pool of stagnant water? The original disciples of the majestic heaven sect naturally all returned to their respective sects, and went to find their mothers. Ling Han temporarily stayed on the Flying Cloud planet. The Mo clan was using all kinds of connections to help him search for the whereabouts of the 5 sects. However, this needed time. However, Ling Han had to first break through to the Sun-Moon tier before he could set out. Thus, there was no need for him to be in a hurry. Hunyo told Ling Han some profound secrets of cultivation, such as how to use the mountains and rivers, the sun and moon, and the heavenly bodies. These weren't just used to store power, but could also be directly used to suppress opponents. In fact, they could even form their own worlds. For example, releasing the mountains and rivers would trap the opponent in this area. Meanwhile, the sun, moon, and heavenly bodies would undoubtedly be more powerful. The level of cultivation in this galaxy was far too low. Thus, the development of the treasuries of cultivators was naturally also incredibly backward. Otherwise, this would be impossible in a high-level galaxy. So it turns out that my battle prowess can still increase by a lot, Ling Han murmured. After suppressing his cultivation level, he battled with Ding Ping, Feng Peyun, and the others. Everyone's cultivation level was the same, but after Ling Han released the mountains and rivers and suppressed them, his battle prowess instantly soared. This was because it was equivalent to battling in his own world. Every movement was naturally under his control, and he could also endlessly influence his opponents. Right now, even if 10 million mountain river tier cultivators ganged up on me, I could still divide them and defeat them one by one. In terms of the development of one's own potential, this galaxy is practically still stuck in the primordial stage. However, Venerable Trinity has clearly released the Eternal River, forming a silver river to protect Yang Hao. Presumably, he learned this secret technique during his battles in the two-realm battlefield. However, he didn't teach it to the disciples of his sect. Perhaps only his true disciples can inherit this secret technique. Ling Han wasn't a person who kept secrets. Although he wasn't generous enough to teach this secret technique to everyone, Feng Peyun, Mu Rongqing, Ding Ping, and the others had all received his selfless teachings. Moreover, Hu Feiyun had naturally also been taught this secret technique. Since she knew it, that meant that Empress Luan Xing had also learned it. As for whether the Empress would teach it to others, Ling Han didn't care either. This was only a trick to using the mountains, rivers, sun, moon, and stars. It wasn't some secret that couldn't be taught. Several days later, the chaotic star's majestic empire sent out a starship to receive the cultivators of their empire. Hu Feiyun, Li Weiwei, and the others all set off on their way back. At first, Ling Han had wanted to kill Zhao Luan as well, but this guy had actually slipped away very quickly. He had long since taken the opportunity to return to Joint Peace Planet on a merchant ship. Meanwhile, Feng Peyun, Mu Rongqing, and the others didn't return to Joint Peace Planet. They wanted to search for the 5 sects with Ling Han. They had all come from a small world, so they naturally wouldn't forget the sins that the 5 sects had once committed. Everyone was cultivating with all their might. Once they found out the galaxy where the 5 sects were, they would rush over. At that time, a bloody battle would be unavoidable. In that case, the stronger everyone was, the better. Because the Leviathan of the Majestic Heaven sect had fallen, the 2 overlords of the Flying Cloud Planet, the 4 Seas Majestic Empire and the Great Heaven Majestic Empire, had finally risen. They invaded the territory that had originally belonged to the Majestic Heaven sect, so a great battle was naturally unavoidable. However, this had nothing to do with Ling Han. He guarded his own territory, and used the Mo clan establishment to obtain a vast amount of level 4 godly metal for him to raise the level of his divine demon sword. Before setting out to search for the 5 sects, he had 2 goals. The first was to break through to the Sun-Moon tier, and the second was to raise the level of his divine demon sword to level 5. He had already cultivated to the pinnacle of the Mountain River tier, yet wanting to break through to the Sun-Moon tier wasn't something that could be accomplished in a short period of time. This required accumulation, not only the accumulation of comprehension of cultivation level, but also origin power. The advancement from the Mountain River tier to the Sun-Moon tier was far too great. Thus, it also required a vast amount of accumulation. Otherwise, if he forcefully broke through, he would only be sucked dry. As Ling Han accumulated his origin power, he also prepared godly medicines for himself. If he didn't have enough accumulation, he could still rely on a vast amount of godly medicines to replenish his origin power. At the same time, he wouldn't have to suck his life essence dry. That would be far too tragic. He didn't even have time to cultivate alchemy. Basically, he sat under the reincarnation tree every day, tempering his Mountain River tier to perfection while exploring the great Tao of the Sun-Moon tier. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. To immortals, half a year was like the blink of an eye. However, to Ling Han and the others, this was over 100 years of comprehension. Ling Han already had enough confidence that he could break through to the Sun-Moon tier, and it was at this moment that the Mo clan finally sent him a piece of good news. They had found the location of the 5 sects. The Cloud Apex planet was located in the Long Light Galaxy, and was about 200 years away from the Flying Cloud Planet. This was an extremely long distance. Otherwise, the Mo clan wouldn't have spent so much time to find out. They had also only found out the location of the 5 sects through merchants from one galaxy after another. Fortunately, Hunyo had modified the cloud-piercing shuttle, and its speed was who knew how many times faster than ordinary starships. Moreover, it was also embedded with a star pattern formation, so there was no need to worry about getting lost in the galaxy. It would take about 2 years. Very good. Ling Han began to break through to the Sun-Moon tier. A mere 7 days later, he opened a brand new door, and a red sun appeared in his dantian. The heavenly tribulation also responded, and immediately rolled over. Ling Han began the painful process again. He shattered his own godly bones, and tempered them under the heavenly tribulation, causing them to rise to the next level. Meanwhile, the auction of the 4 drops of thousand source true fluid and the large number of ancient pill recipes had also allowed Ling Han to accumulate a vast amount of wealth. Not only had he paid off his old debts, but he still had a large amount of wealth left over. Now, he had exchanged all of it for level 4 godly metal, which he used to feed the divine demon sword. Only at this moment did Ling Han let the divine demon sword consume the last piece of level 4 godly metal. It had reached a level of qualitative change, and was also advancing toward level 5. The man and the sword experienced the heavenly tribulation together. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Lightning intertwined, and it was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han turned into shattered bones, and a series of cracks actually appeared on the divine demon sword. However, it didn't shatter. Instead, it continuously expelled metal shards from its body. Those were shards, useless trash. It was as if the divine sword had developed its own intelligence, and was actively evolving toward perfection. The lightning transformed into rain, completely blocking Ling Han and the divine demon sword. Brilliant light illuminated the entire galaxy. Mobile. Chapter 9:16. Ling Han struggled, and walked out of the hole in the mountain. His physique was really too terrifying. He was hit twice by an elite in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, yet he was completely unscathed. Senior Sister Shui, listen to me. Pang. It was clear that Shui Yenyu had flown into a rage out of humiliation. Though she hadn't exposed herself, it could be said that she had been completely exposed by Ling Han. How could she not be enraged by this? She had gone mad, and charged over. Pang, pang, pang. She unleashed a flurry of attacks on Ling Han's chest. Ling Han had just come out of the hole, and was immediately beaten back again, and was still sinking in. No matter how sturdy the mountain rocks of the immortal realm were, they couldn't stand the ravages of a mountain river tier elite. More importantly, Ling Han's physique was comparable to level 1 godly metal. Otherwise, with such blows, it would definitely be Ling Han who would be beaten into a pulp, and the mountain would be completely unscathed. If the mountain had a spirit, it would definitely complain, "It's my fault. Who did I offend?" Shui Yenyu fully displayed the might of the mountain river tier, and under her bombardment, Ling Han was completely unable to retaliate. The mountain rocks continued to cave in, and he, too, continued to cave in. He had forcibly carved out a cave in the mountain wall. The culprit of this matter was naturally Li Weiwei. At this time, how could Ling Han not understand that today should be the day that females entered? As for why he could obtain an entry token, it was very simple. It was very simple. Li Weiwei just had to steal and borrow a piece. With her status, it was definitely not difficult for her to do this. But Senior Sister Shui, can you at least listen to my explanation? I'm also a victim, though I did indeed obtain many things that I shouldn't have. It's not good for you to kill me without saying anything. The more Shui Yenyu fought, the more shocked she became. How could this pervert be so resilient? Was he really in the shattering void tier? Though she was only in the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier, she was a 2-star genius, and her battle prowess was comparable to the late stage of the low extreme. Being bombarded by her like this, not to mention the late stage of the low extreme, even the peak stage of the low extreme would definitely not be able to withstand it. But Ling Han withstood it. Aside from an expression of helplessness and sullenness, he couldn't be any better. She was really going crazy. She was completely naked, yet she couldn't do anything about it. The Sky-Winged Divine Sword. She shouted softly. She had been so angry that she had actually forgotten to use the divine weapon. Wang, a ray of light flew out from between her eyebrows, and instantly transformed into a 3-foot-long blade. She held it in her hand and stabbed it toward Ling Han. Ling Han immediately felt a chill, and all the hair on his body stood on end. This sword has the power to hurt him, even kill him. It was forged from at least level 2 godly metal. Ling Han barely dodged. Shua, the green blade missed his heart, but still pierced into his body. The divine patterns shone, and immediately caused considerable damage to his body. Furthermore, he hadn't been stabbed in any of his vitals. Otherwise, he would have definitely died. This time, Ling Han also became angry. It's a fact that I'm naked, but at least you're wearing clothes. Strictly speaking, there's nothing to lose. Besides, even if I've committed a capital crime, you should at least give me a chance to defend myself. When Shui Yanyu saw that her attack was effective, she immediately drew her sword back, and stabbed it toward Ling Han again. Ling Han couldn't care less. He lowered his head, and crashed into the other party's bosom. If they were in an open space, Shui Yanyu would naturally be unafraid. A casual palm strike would be enough to send Ling Han flying, and she would chase after him and stab through this pervert's heart with her sword. But this was a cave that had been forcefully created, and was extremely narrow. Even turning one's body was somewhat difficult, so how could there be any space to maneuver? Furthermore, even though Shui Yanyu's cultivation level was higher, how many real battles had she experienced? Though the action of Ling Han lowering his head and pouncing was simple, it was the best response at this time and place. And to react in such an instant where there was practically no time to think was actually the battle experience of his 2 lifetimes. Shui Yanyu's attack was also an instinctive reaction, but she didn't think that Ling Han would directly crash into her bosom. In such a small space, where could she possibly dodge? Pang! This time, it was her turn to be hit squarely by Ling Han. Her whole body was pushed back a few feet. Thankfully, she had spread out her origin power defense in time. Otherwise, with her physique, she would definitely suffer greatly from this collision. At least, if her jade-like body brushed against the sharp mountain rocks, she would definitely be scratched. But this wasn't the main point. What made her hair stand on end was that Ling Han had actually pounced into her bosom, and his face was even buried in her bosom. This almost caused her to faint from anxiety. Damn, pervert, wolf. Even though she looked extremely charming and seductive, that was a gift from the heavens, and had nothing to do with her personality at all. She gritted her teeth, and forcefully pulled back her sword, stabbing it toward Ling Han's back. This strike was extraordinarily fast and heavy. If it landed, not only would Ling Han be pierced through, even she would not be able to escape. This was her fierce side. What a fierce horse. With the sensitivity of Ling Han's divine sense, he could naturally sense the slight distance of danger behind him, and such a thought actually appeared in his mind. At this time, if he hid in the Black Tower, then he would naturally be safe, but Shui Yanyu definitely wouldn't be able to stop the momentum of the sword, and it was possible that she would cause severe injuries to herself, or even directly kill him. That was a treasured sword forged from at least level 2 godly metal, and its destructive power was definitely terrifying. This was only a misunderstanding, and the main culprit was Li Weiwei. If Shui Yanyu died because of this, Ling Han would feel guilty. With this thought, he gave up on the idea of entering the Black Tower. He opened his mouth, and bit, ah. Shui Yanyu felt as if her whole body was about to explode in an instant. Her mind was completely blank, and she had no thoughts at all. Pa! The treasured sword in her hand fell down powerlessly. It was really sharp, and with just a little bit of force, the tip of the sword pierced into the hard mountain rocks, all the way to the hilt. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. No wonder, even with his physique, he was almost pierced through by the sword. So this sword was sharp to such an extent. However, could he keep biting her and not let go? Ling Han grimaced bitterly. Though he had temporarily resolved a dead end, it seemed as if he had pushed himself into an even more awkward situation. That was because he had really bitten the wrong place, and it was precisely the other party's towering mountain peak. But if that wasn't the case, how could he have given her such a huge shock that she even lost her sword? Shui Yenyu's days only lasted for an instant. Her beautiful face had already become livid, and her head of black hair was all standing up. Her watery eyes had also become completely red, and it was obvious that she had entered into a berserk mode. Not good. If she really went berserk, then she would not rest until she was dead. Ling Han didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation, and entered the Black Tower with a show. He had wanted to enter the Black Tower previously, but in order to save Shui Yenyu's life, he had delayed. Shui Yenyu was in a violent rage. This bastard actually wanted to kill him. Even if there were academy rules, so what? She was going to kill him. She was in disbelief. She was obviously blocking the only way out, but where were Ling Han's people? Ta. It was at this moment that the sound of footsteps traveled over from outside. Chapter 9:17. Shui Yenyu made a prompt decision, and turned to walk out of the cave. Sister Shui, why are you here? A dozen or so girls came outside, all very beautiful, and the one in the lead was Li Weiwei. Though her cultivation level was not the highest, and could even be said to be at the bottom, the status of the daughter of the left minister was too noble, so she naturally became the center of attention. The Northern institution recruited students once every 20 years, so there were naturally other shattering void-tier cultivators. Moreover, Li Weiwei was not the top 3 that could enter, which meant that the descendants of nobles had special privileges, so it was not strange that a dozen or so girls came this time. Shui Yenyu forcibly suppressed the killing intent in her heart, forced a smile, and said, I am also a member of the Northern institution, so isn't it normal for me to come here today? Li Weiwei nodded, looked around, and asked, Sister Shui, did you encounter any unexpected situation? Shui Yenyu's heart instantly moved, and she asked in a low voice, what do you mean? Nothing, what meaning? Li Weiwei hurriedly said with a laugh. Shui Yenyu's eyes narrowed, and instantly exuded a powerful pressure. She was in the mountain river tier, completely crushing the shattering void tier cultivators here in terms of life level. Li Weiwei instantly lowered her head and started playing with her fingers. She indeed had a guilty conscience, but thankfully, she didn't cause any big trouble. That blockhead should have overslept, and hadn't come yet. Ji Yun-er's expression changed, and she said, Weiwei, you took away my entry plaque yesterday, is it related to this? With Shui Yenyu's intelligence, how could she not understand? Her expression immediately became stern, and she shouted, Weiwei, speak. Being scared like this, Li Weiwei could only confess honestly. I wanted to mess with that blockhead, so I stole Sister Yun's entry plaque and gave it to that guy, telling him to come here today. I specially invited so many people to come together just to make fun of him, but I never thought that this guy actually didn't come. How infuriating. Infuriating. Shui Yenyu really wanted to cry now. She was the one who was going to be infuriated, okay? She really blamed Ling Han wrongly. He wasn't a pervert, but had been tricked by Li Weiwei. But the problem was that she had been naked by him, and she had even been bitten by that guy, and definitely not by him. What should she do? Kill Ling Han or Li Weiwei? One was tricked, and the other was just a prank, but it led to the current situation. Hey, why are there men's clothes here? Someone finally noticed the clothes Ling Han had taken off. There's even a cave here. That's strange. I don't remember it being here the last time I came, another girl said in surprise. All the women turned their gazes toward Shui Yenyu. I don't know either. Shui Yenyu refused to admit it no matter what. This matter could only be limited to her and Ling Han. Otherwise, if a third person knew about it, would she still have the face to live? Li Weiwei was filled with suspicions and decided to look for Ling Han later. If Ling Han was still alive, it meant that he had not come. If he had disappeared from the face of the earth, he had probably been silenced by big sister Shui. Her face was instantly filled with bitterness. She had only wanted to prank Ling Han and let him bathe with a handsome man. She had brought people to watch, so how would this blockhead dare to show off in front of her in the future? But now, if this guy was really killed by Shui Yenyu because of this, she would definitely feel guilty for the rest of her life. Though the women were curious and puzzled, time waited for no one. They still undressed, leaving only their undergarments on, and entered the hot spring one after another. Shui Yenyu soon left. She had come early, so she naturally left early as well, so there was nothing strange about her arrival. However, they could not understand the pile of men's clothes on the ground and the abrupt cave. What had happened here? Could it be left behind by the boy from yesterday? Ling Han hid in the Black Tower, and couldn't help but sigh. Though he had temporarily avoided a conflict, and Shui Yenyu would eventually know that this was a misunderstanding, the problem was that the scenery he had seen was not fake, and the mountain peak he had tasted was also not fake. Needless to say, that scenery was really moving, causing his blood to boil even when he recalled it, and he had the urge to transform into a beast. So big, so round, so soft, and so bouncy, and also a little sweet. Ling Han reminisced, and could be considered to have found joy in his bitterness. I'll have to face what I have to face eventually. I'll think about it when the time comes. Ling Han simply did not think about it anymore. He first used the power of the Black Tower to drive away the murderous aura of the divine sword, and the body of Diamond rapidly recovered his physique. Then, he began to cultivate his 6 techniques one. Bit by bit, he was improving. A day's time passed quickly, and today was the turn of the boys to enter the pool to cultivate. Ling Han naturally would not waste this opportunity. He came out of the Black Tower, and saw that his clothes were already gone by the side of the pool. Thankfully, the Black Tower had everything. He entered the black jade pool, and began to extract the essence within. The feeling was very strange. His physical body was strengthening, and so was his spirit. He did not need to expend any effort at all, as if the heaven and earth were helping him. As expected, it was a precious treasure. Ling Han suddenly had the urge to dig this pool back to the Great Ling Empire, but he immediately sighed. He'd first get rid of his status as a hostage. Strength was the way of the king. Not long after, other students arrived. Ma Xing, Qing Haofei, and some others that he did not know. They were all outstanding students that had entered the Northern Institution in the last batch, and some were the descendants of nobles. They did not need to be ranked highly to receive special care from the academy. Of course, there were very few of them. In the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the first-rate forces were naturally the 9 kings, and the left and right ministers, and the 7 generals could only be considered second-rate. Below them, there were still third-rate, fourth-rate, and all the way to 9th-rate forces. The Academy's extra-legal leniency extended to third-rate forces. Fourth-rate forces did not have the slightest bit of special care in the Academy. For example, though the Luo clan was very awesome, they did not have the right to enter into a third-rate force. Thus, the Luo brothers could not enter the Black Jade Pool, which saved them from a battle of words. After staying for 8 hours, Ling Han put on his clothes and left. Blockhead, you're not dead. He had just returned to his residence when he saw Li Weiwei jump out excitedly. Ling Han almost could not restrain himself from rushing up to beat her up, but when he thought that he could not involve Shui Yenyu in this, he forcibly restrained himself. He pretended to be confused, and said, "What do you mean by dead? You really can't say anything nice. Pei, I was worried half to death for you, and yet you have this kind of attitude. What do you mean?" Li Weiwei immediately put her hands on her hips. "Worried about what?" Ling Han asked in return. Li Weiwei instantly stuttered. How could she have the nerve to say that she had wanted to trick Ling Han? She humphed and said, "Nothing much. A stupid blockhead like you deserved to die." She left in a huff. However, Ling Han was fine, so her worry was dispelled. Still, she was displeased again in her heart. She had failed to trick Ling Han again this time, and was too displeased. Ling Han watched her leave, thinking that he definitely had to find an excuse to give this unruly young miss a good thrashing in the future. She had not been tricked to death this time, but what about the next time, and the time after that? Chapter 9:18. Ling Han returned to his room, but he had only sat for a while when there was a knock on the courtyard door. He walked over, and looked through the crack of the door, and couldn't help but feel a headache. Shui Yenyu the creditor had come. What to do? Xiao. Without waiting for him to decide what to do, Shui Yenyu directly leaped over the wall and entered, her pretty face filled with malice as she looked at him coldly. Ling Han couldn't help but swallow. With such a leap, the other party's chest rose and fell violently. It was truly alluring. It really wasn't that he was a pervert, but that he had just tasted it yesterday, and clearly knew the size and size, so he couldn't help but stare at it. "Senior Sister Shui, it's not very good for you to barge into someone else's residence like this, right?" he said weakly. "Then you peeped on the day when the girls enter the Black Jade Hot Spring. That's fine," Shui Yenyu said through gritted teeth. Her pretty face blushed, and she was as enchanting as water, causing one's heart to melt. A vixen, truly a vixen. Ling Han missed Hunyou very much. If Hunyou was still here, she would definitely jump out to protect him now, right? But now, he had to face this kind of temptation alone. The hateful thing was that the other party's strength was more than 100 times stronger than his, and he didn't even have the chance to force himself on her. If he wanted to become a beast, he could only be worse than a beast. So sad. "Senior sister, this is really a misunderstanding," Ling Han said with a serious expression. "Even if it's a misunderstanding, that can't change the fact that you stole from me, and. Shui Yenyu said bitterly. She was as pure as ice and as clean as jade, but her breasts were actually assaulted by Ling Han. This practically made her want to commit suicide. But even if she wanted to commit suicide, she would have to kill Ling Han first. How could she let him have his way? Ling Han sighed, and said, "I am a man, I will take responsibility." Shui Yenyu humphed. "How do you want to take responsibility? Don't tell me you want to marry me. That's too wishful thinking." Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Though I have no power or influence now, and my strength is not strong, in less than 100 years, I will change everything. Senior sister, you have no intention of marrying me, and I already have a lover. However, I can use other methods to make it up to you." Why is this guy so confident? With his talent, it was indeed not difficult for him to advance into the immortal level, but merely the 4 levels of the mountain river tier would take at least 1,000 years for you to reach them, and he would already be considered a super genius. Ordinary people would have to spend hundreds of thousands of years to do so. What can you do in a mere 100 years? Shui Yenyu waved her hand, and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. My request is very simple. During our time in the academy, you and I will pretend to be husband and wife." Puff Ling Han spurted out. "Your train of thought was too imaginative. Just now you said in your dreams, and now you took the initiative to propose to pretend to be husband and wife. What the hell is going on?" Don't misunderstand, I just want to use you to get rid of someone, Shui Yanyu explained. She did not want Ling Han to misunderstand. Zhao Luan. Ling Han's heart leapt. Shui Yanyu nodded. This was her nightmare. It had been haunting her all this time, and she couldn't get rid of it. Ling Han snickered, and said, "You have really given me a difficult problem. Not only is senior brother Zhao in the high extreme of the mountain river tier, he is also the son of a great general. Do you think I can stand against him? Perhaps, our relationship has just been announced, and I will be dead on the streets the next day. You have a spatial god tool, so would you die so easily?" Shui Yanyu asked calmly. Ling Han's heart immediately tightened, but his expression did not change, and he asked, "What spatial god tool?" "You only need to know in your heart," Shui Yanyu said. "Do you agree or not?" "What if I don't?" Ling Han asked tentatively. "I will kill you, and then commit suicide. In any case, I have been pestered by Zhao Luan to the point where I can no longer bear it, and this is just the right time to free myself," Shui Yanyu said calmly. Obviously, the thought of suicide had not suddenly appeared. A feeling of pity suddenly welled up in Ling Han. Just how much did she hate Zhao Luan that she would make such a seductive beauty end her life in order to free herself? He thought for a moment, and said, "All right, I agree. However, it is not because of your threat, but rather because I feel that no matter how much I like a person, I should not use coercion." Shui Yanyu was surprised. She looked deeply at Ling Han for a while, then nodded, and said, "Thank you." Originally, it was just a transaction, and she naturally did not need to say thank you, but it was different now. "Oh, that's right, Zhao Luan has the reputation of being a genius, and is more so the son of a great general. Why do you hate him so much?" Even Ling Han had a gossipy heart. Shui Yanyu thought for a moment, and said, "This person's mind is deep and dark. When I am with him, it is like being in the same nest as a poisonous snake, making me tremble in fear. Once, someone spoke ill of him behind his back, and he just happened to see it. However, he only smiled and said that he did not mind, but the next day, that person's entire family was slaughtered." Ling Han couldn't help but shudder. So ruthless. He had only spoken ill of him, was there a need to be so vicious? However, that person had only spoken ill of him, and he was snatching food from the mouth of a tiger. If he snatched away the person in her heart, what kind of revenge would he receive? Scared? Shui Yanyu smirked coldly. Indeed a little. After all, the Zhao clan is too powerful, and I am no match for them now. Ling Han nodded. This was nothing to be ashamed of. Even if Great General Zhao was only in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, how many cultivation levels were higher than him? No matter how confident Ling Han was, he did not think that he could turn the tables and suppress the Zhao clan in 100 years' time. It is useless even if you are scared. You only have two paths. Either you die in my hands, or you die in Zhao Luan's hands, Shui Yanyu said coldly. How cold? Ling Han showed a smile, and said, "I will not die." He had so many responsibilities on him, so how could he die here? It is best that you are confident. However, if you die, I will also remain a widow for the rest of my life for you, Shui Yanyu said calmly. Ling Han couldn't help but feel gloomy, and said, "I am not dead yet, all right? Also, since you have this kind of resolve, how about you stay and serve me tonight?" Schwa. A sword was immediately pressed against Ling Han's neck, and Shui Yanyu said coldly, "I have a fake engagement with you because you are already a dead man. You died for me, and I will remain a widow for you. This is what I owe you, but if you want to take advantage of me, that is forcing me to kill you." Ling Han raised his hands, smiled, and said, "Just joking. Sigh, though we are a fake couple, we have to pretend to be intimate on the surface. Otherwise, how can we win the trust of others?" Shui Yanyu stared at him for a while, then put away her sword, and said, "In front of others, I will give you the respect you deserve, but don't delude yourself into asking for a mile after being given an inch." "Fine, fine, fine." Ling Han touched his neck. Thankfully, his skin was thick enough, or else it would definitely be rubbed to the point of bleeding. Shui Yanyu felt like she was going to go crazy. They were obviously about to become enemies with the Zhao clan, so why was this guy not nervous at all? To be honest, she had pondered for an entire night yesterday before finally gritting her teeth and making up her mind to make such a decision. The Zhao clan, what kind of colossus was it? Just thinking about it made one suffocate. "From tomorrow onwards, you will be trapped in a whirlpool," she said. "Whatever," Ling Han said very casually. Shui Yanyu suddenly softened, and said, "I will give you another 3 days. 3 days later, I will announce the news that we have privately pledged to marry each other." Chapter 919. Although the Han Lin Pavilion had already lost 4 matches in a row, it was just like a sect competing in martial arts. The 4 Mountain River tier cultivators could lose all of their matches, but as long as the Sun Moon tier cultivators won a single match, they would be able to regain all of their losses. This was also the case for Alchemy. The most powerful members of the Han Lin Pavilion were their 2 level 5 alchemists. Thus, if they wanted to completely overwhelm the Han Lin Pavilion, they would have to completely defeat these 2 level 5 alchemists. Of course, their previous victories had not been in vain. This proved that the Treasure Forest Pavilion was superior to the Han Lin Pavilion in terms of alchemical pills from level 1 to level 4. The Treasure Forest Pavilion was indeed quite ruthless. They wanted to crush the entire Han Lin Pavilion. Thus, if people wanted to buy alchemical pills, they would definitely consider the Treasure Forest Pavilion first. There was nothing they could do about it. After all, the quality of their pills was higher. Every pill was 30% poisonous, and one couldn't eat too many pills. Thus, under the situation where there was a fixed number of pills, one would definitely choose the pills with the higher quality. Thus, as long as the Treasure Forest Pavilion defeated the 2 level 5 alchemists of the Han Lin Pavilion, the Treasure Forest Pavilion would naturally win this match. Moreover, this match was being conducted in public. Moreover, it had already been going on for half a month. Who in the city didn't know about this? Kang Xiu Yuan walked over, and asked, "Who would like to compete with me?" "I'll go," a middle-aged man said as he walked over. His appearance was ordinary, yet his body exuded a strong scent of medicine. This was because he had come into contact with alchemical pills and medicinal ingredients for many years. "Liang Jinbo," Kang Xiu Yuan said in a deep voice. "Ha, you recognize me?" the middle-aged man asked. Kang Xiu Yuan chuckled, and said, "I've long heard of Grandmaster Liang's illustrious name. I've heard that Grandmaster Liang was already a level 5 alchemist 100,000 years ago. You're probably not far from becoming a level 6 alchemist now, right?" A proud expression appeared on Liang Jinbo's face. Alchemy was just like cultivation, and every step forward was incredibly difficult. He had already become a level 5 alchemist 100,000 years ago, yet he was still stuck at this cultivation level now. However, one had to know how long it would take to advance from the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier to the medium extreme. Even those with better talent would need 400,000 to 500,000 years. Thus, he only used 100,000 years to have a chance of becoming a level 6 alchemist. This was actually extremely impressive. He was completely worthy of the word prodigy. Kang Xiu Yuan, you can also be considered a prodigy of alchemy. Why don't you and the Han Lin Pavilion join our Treasure Forest Pavilion? Liang Jinbo offered. Kang Xiu Yuan shook his head, and said, "The Han Lin Pavilion is the blood, sweat, and tears of us brothers. We definitely won't allow it to collapse." "Ha, then there's nothing more to say." Liang Jinbo stretched out his hand, and said, "Let's compete. Please." Liang Jinbo paused for a moment, and then said, "Since it's my side that's challenging you, and I've been many years older than you, I can also be considered half a senior. In that case, let me decide what alchemical pill to refine first. There was a huge disparity. This was because there was still a difference in difficulty between level 5 alchemical pills. The person who chose first would be at a slight disadvantage, while the person who chose later could calmly make adjustments according to their own strength. Kang Xiu Yuan didn't force himself. Ling Han had indeed immersed himself in alchemy for tens of thousands of years more than him, so he didn't have much of an advantage. I'll refine the 4 directions pill, Liang Jinbo said in a low voice after pondering for a moment. Kang Xiu Yuan was slightly shocked. The 4 directions pill was one of the more difficult level 5 alchemical pills to refine. Then, if he wanted to win against his opponent, he would definitely have to choose an even more difficult alchemical pill. Of course, he could also choose an easier alchemical pill and hope that Liang Jinbo would make a mistake and explode his alchemical pill. Then, he would only need to refine a level 5 alchemical pill to win. But if Ling Han wasn't confident, why would he say that he wanted to refine the 4 directions pill at this time? He pondered for a moment, and then said, then I'll refine the 4 directions pill as well. Both of them were refining the 4 directions pill, so it was even easier to compete. Whoever could refine more pills in one cauldron would naturally be the victor. And if the number of pills was the same, then the quality of the pills could also be compared. Then let's begin. Both of them first prepared their ingredients. The treasure forest pavilion had come prepared, and they had naturally brought their ingredients with them. Moreover, Kang Xiu Yuan was the master of this place, so he naturally chose his ingredients very quickly. After a short while, the two of them said to begin, and then began to refine pills. They sorted out and refined the ingredients, and then started a fire. Soon, the two of them entered the most crucial refinement process. Ling Han only pondered for a short while before shaking his head. With his insight as the alchemy emperor, he could already tell that Kang Xiu Yuan was no match for Liang Jinbo. Kang Xiu Yuan's talent in alchemy was indeed no inferior to Ling Han's. In fact, it was even superior to his. Unfortunately, Ling Han had been a level 5 alchemist for 100,000 years more than him. This was a very, very large gap. Ling Han thought about this, and then walked toward Yun Wang. Stop! The members of the Han Lin Pavilion hurriedly stopped a young man who was walking over recklessly. Yun Wang also walked over upon hearing this. After meeting Ling Han's eyes, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, and say, have we met before? This person's eyes gave him a sense of déjà vu. Moreover, there were far too many complicated emotions contained in those eyes. Ling Han lowered his gaze slightly, and said with a smile, I want to join the Han Lin Pavilion. Is that okay? Yun Wang was astonished. This young man actually wanted to join the Han Lin Pavilion. Didn't he see that the Han Lin Pavilion was in a very bad situation right now? Yet, he actually wanted to join. Strange. He asked, you're also an alchemist? Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, I've studied for a few years. A few years? Yun Wang pondered for a moment before nodding, and saying, all right. A person's heart was revealed in times of crisis. Ling Han actually wanted to join the Han Lin Pavilion at such a time. It was like sending charcoal in a snowy day, and it made him feel very comfortable. Thus, no matter how strong Ling Han's alchemy abilities were, what he accepted was his sincerity. Young man, how should I address you? He asked again. Ling Han. What? Yun Wang exclaimed in shock, and almost jumped up. This person actually had the same name as his deceased master. Previously, he had already felt that Ling Han was very familiar, and with the addition of this name, his heart involuntarily trembled. Unfortunately, no matter how he looked, he couldn't find any similarities between this Ling Han and his master. Moreover, before he had left for the immortal realm, his master had already disappeared for several hundred years. He should have indeed died. It's just a coincidence, he thought. Yun Yong Wang couldn't help but ask, Ling Han, where are you from? Joint Peace Planet, Ling Han replied. He didn't directly reveal his identity. Firstly, there were many eyes and ears here. If he revealed that he had come from the lower realm, it was extremely likely that news would reach the ears of the 5 sects, and they would target him in advance. Secondly, 10,000 years had already passed, so he didn't know whether these disciples of his had changed or not. This change referred to the bottom line of good and evil. He had to observe them first. Yun Yong Wang was slightly confused. The immortal realm was far too vast, and unless one was a businessman, the majority of people would only stay on the same planet for their entire lives. Moreover, the Joint Peace Planet was a full 200 years away from this planet at normal travel speed. Thus, it was completely normal that he hadn't heard of it. Oh. He nodded, a hint of disappointment appearing on his face. However, his heart felt more at ease, and he focused on the battle between Liang Jinbo and Kang Xiu Yuan. This battle concerned the future of the Han Lin Pavilion. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.